Alrighty, welcome in to the NHL Entry Draft. Today, we have quite the stream coming for you. We'll have live analysis, live results, everything that you can hope for. So stay tuned as we wait for the first pick for Chicago. We can definitely assume this pick will be Connor Bedard, but we don't know for sure. We'll definitely see. I think there's a high chance. I'd be very surprised, at least, if it wasn't Bedard. However, crazy things have happened. And I mean, even look at last year where Slavkovsky went one. We were expecting Wright. Who knows, right? And I'm looking forward to the trades. We made a prediction video a little bit earlier. I predicted 7 trades tonight from 7 o'clock onward. So we'll see if that is anywhere close. Let me know in the chat here whether you think it's going to be higher, lower, and that being said, welcome you in. And as we sort of wait, we'll take a look at some of the trades that have gone down from basically earlier today, a little bit into yesterday. And one of the big ones we saw was Tyler Toffoli's becoming a New Jersey Devil. And this deal is just crazy in terms of what they're looking at as a return. The Devils are slowly becoming front runners for the Stanley Cup next year. And I wouldn't be surprised to see them, especially see them be able to really take advantage of what's happening in this league. The forward groups is just unreal for the Devils. And I think when they look at that sort of top 6, it's well-rounded and it's a good pick. And as we sort of tune in here, the draft is starting to begin. They have the final 7 o'clock hit, so we'll sort of see who gets drafted. I'd highly suggest if you're going to bet this. Don't recommend betting on this, but Connor Bedard seems to be the front runner. I'd be very surprised to see him not be picked number 1, but we will see. Plenty of time left. But with that being said, we will tune in here, see what actually is going on. So I think at the end of the day, stay tuned. If there's any trades to be announced, we will have the full analysis for it. So be sure to stay tuned for that if there is a trade. Otherwise, we'll sort of walk you through what's going to happen. I'll refresh you with my picks. Number 1, I had Connor Bedard. Obvious pick. Number 2, Adam Fantilli. 3, you got Leo Carlson. 4, we have Matevy Mishkov. Now, this Mishkov pick, very interesting. Obviously, he's a very, very good player. He's been playing in Russia for a while. We'll see whether or not he's going to be able to take that next step to the NHL level. Obviously, he still has to wait a few years before he can come into the NHL. But with that being said, I do think that Mishkov is a great pick, especially for a team like San Jose, where they're not necessarily right now looking to contend right away, where really they're looking, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years before they're really a team that's going to contend. I think the perfect fit for Mishkov is going to be in San Jose, if San Jose wants him. If they don't, there's been some rumors of behavioral issues with Mishkov. Obviously, coming to a new country might be a problem for him. The one team I would not be surprised to see him go to tonight is the Montreal Canadiens. They just had Kent Hughes on here. And it's going to be interesting to see whether they want to do something out of the book, right? Where obviously Montreal is a team where they're a historic franchise. They expect to do well. We'll see if that sort of translates here. I'm curious to see what's going to happen. I think at the end of the day, it's going to be a tight problem or a little bit of a weird window to move a guy or a pick would be like Mishkov. But when the 5th overall pick with the Habs, there's been rumors that they're going to move that pick. And I would not be surprised to see that be to a team like Nashville, who's looking right now to be moving into that top 5 round. Right now, they do have the 15th overall pick. They got a few prospects in Askarov. They've already announced that they're willing to trade their goaltender prospect, Askarov, who you've seen at the World Juniors. He's been sort of a shaky goaltender. He likes to throw his stick a lot. But obviously with the NHL, sort of in the AHL development program, we'll see if he can develop into a really, really good goalie in this league. And I do sort of expect him to do so. I think he's a pretty solid player overall. And that's sort of where I see the Habs going. If they can pick up anybody, I think it's Mishkov here. If they don't want to trade back, and I think there is a potential for the Habs to trade back to get a guy like Askarov, to get a few other assets from the Nashville Predators, where you sort of see, you never really know who it's going to be, but if you're looking at strictly what Nashville can provide to a team like the Habs, it might be a guy like Roman Josi, or maybe, it's going to be a tough trade to get up. At the end of the day, I think when we look at what the Predators can give, Josi is probably one of their biggest trade chips. Obviously, that's a little bit out there in terms of what they can give, but I'll be curious to see whether or not they decide to go there. Well, they also want to move up even further, right? We have a team like Yossi where you have some teams that are, starting to make that move. And I think with Yossi, a guy or a team rather that might be looking at his team like the Columbus Blue Jackets, where obviously we've already seen them make some moves to bolster up their team despite not being a contender right now. You look a few years, if they want to move up, get a franchise piece like Roman Yossi, I don't see why they wouldn't be able to do that, which is very, very interesting move. So with that being said, definitely some interesting picks. I'll sort of rhyme off the rest of the list here. We have Will Smith right now going to the Habs. 6, we have Ryan Leonard. 7, Zach Benson. 8, we have Dalibor Dvorsky. Dvorsky, I think, is going to be a bad, not bad pick, but he's not going to be as good of a pick as some of these other prospects. I think it's going to be a dud in the long term. But with that being said, 9 with David Reinbacher. Hello, Stefan. How are you doing tonight? 9, David Reinbacher. 10, we have Axel Sandin-Pellikka with the St. Louis Blues. I was very, very high on this pick. I think one of the main reasons why they're going to pick up a guy like Pellikka is, you look at what he provides to a team like St. Louis Blues. It's a lot like what happened with Torrey Krug, who they're right now trying to move to a team. You're looking at a team like Boston. You're looking at all these other teams. I don't think that'll happen tonight, but I do think it will happen in the next little bit where, they've already looked to move an asset like him. Whether or not they will still remains to be seen. We saw him with the Kevin Hayes trade where they've already started to move cap. Looks like they're trying to clear some room, but we will see sort of what goes on there. Definitely going to be an interesting day. Definitely stay tuned to see if there's going to be more trades, whether there's going to be a pick. We're looking about probably 10-ish minutes before the first pick is announced. So definitely stay tuned. It's going to be, got to be Connor Bedard. I'd be surprised if it was not Connor Bedard. But with that being said, still plenty of time still to be arranged. The number 2 pick, I think, is going to be the interesting one. Does a team like the Anaheim Ducks trade down, for example? Yeah, me too. I'm looking very much forward to it. Which team do you cheer for? But I am curious to see sort of what goes on there, whether or not, the Ducks even, who are a team that who knows what they want to do, right? They have the power to do whatever they're looking to do. And at the end of the day, I would not be surprised to see them trade their pick away to a contending team for, one of those franchise pieces. You look, like you said, Nashville, probably not going to trade a guy like Roman Yossi. But if they do decide to trade a guy like Roman Yossi, then who knows what's going to happen, right? I think Yossi alone probably can get them that second overall pick. And I think Columbus would be more than welcome to take a guy like Roman Yossi, maybe trade him off for some more assets, maybe. Or you look at the value of Adam Fantilli versus a guy like Roman Yossi. I think they're right up there, neck and neck. Sure, obviously, Bedard, I think, is just that much further. To be honest, it's probably pretty equal right now. In terms of value for McDavid and Bedard, later in the career, maybe not. We'll see what happens with Bedard, how his development goes, wherever he lands. But at the end of the day, Chicago, I'd be very surprised at least if they don't end up with Bedard here. They made the move to get Hall. I don't know how it happened. I'm a Bruins fan, and I'm still angry about it, to put it nicely. I think that's probably the best words I can use to describe that tribockery of a trade. Because even today it was reported that Bertuzzi is not signing in Boston until after he wants to test the free agent market, which, to be honest, is just disastrous. And I don't know what Sweeney was thinking at that time, but nonetheless, he made the move, and we'll see if he can redeem himself. Lucic was reported to go to the Bruins today. Curious to see what that signing will be. Seemed to be a league minimum deal. And here he comes, Gary Bettman, the clown show of the NHL. We'll see what he wants to say. And he tried to put David Poley. That's a desperate move. He tried to put David Poley, 76ers fan. They tried to pull the GM, the local GM. That is just a corny move by Bettman. Try and get some claps. Nice try. Yeah, you better boo him after what he's done for this team. This league, rather. Just a joke of a commissioner. I hope he gets fired. If you are new here, though, please be sure to hit the like, hit subscribe. What's your favorite team? My favorite team is the Boston Bruins. So it's not the happiest fans right now after a disastrous playoffs, but nonetheless, it's sort of what happens. You're on that cycle of being a Bruins fan. Right now, we are right down here. But that's okay. I have a feeling Sweeney's going to do something tonight. Well, I hope Sweeney does something tonight to really prove us all wrong, but we'll see. Nonetheless, Bettman is going to keep yapping his trap tonight. And I'm curious to see. I don't really think Bedard is one to move here. But at the end of the day, that second overall pick, that is where it really gets interesting. You have four-ish sort of contenders. For me, it comes down to Fantilli, Carlson, or Mishkov. I think it's got to be Fantilli, just basically where the Anaheim Ducks are. They're looking for a player that's going to contribute right away. Meanwhile, when we look at, some of these other teams, it's more of a long-term rebuild. And that's really where a guy like Mishkov, where he's not coming in for the first 2 or 3 years because he's playing in Russia. He signed a contract out in Russia. That's where, the Ducks don't really make sense for a guy like Mishkov because they have the players, they have the capital to make a deep run. They just don't have the pieces yet. And I think at the end of the day, they're going to make a move this offseason to really bolster up their team. I look forward to seeing what they can do. But overall, the pick, I think, is just about to be announced some point here. Once the commissioner gets off his talk, they're going to put the Chicago Blackhawks on the clock, and we will see sort of who they pick. Obviously, they've had a long time to decide, about a month-ish now, to decide who they're going to pick with the number one overall. But at the end of the day, if it isn't Connor Bedard, I think Chicago is going to be on fire, especially after the trade for Taylor Hall. It doesn't make sense for anybody but Connor Bedard. So we'll see. Still interesting move to be made. Obviously, trades are going to happen tonight, so be sure to tune in for those. We will have full trade reviews on the channel right here. We'll flip the board over, and we'll talk through every trade, and we'll see if the first overall pick is going to be traded. Probably not, but that'd be exciting. I mean, we've seen crazier stuff in a draft, right? We saw the number one overall pick for 7 or 8 months, the projected number one, drop to spot number 4. So you never know what's going to happen. That's the joy of NHL drafts. But we'll see. We'll see what ends up happening here. Oh, and Pekka Rinne and Roman Josi are coming out. Speak of the devil, right? We'll see whether or not Josi decides to get traded tonight. Pekka Rinne's got the guitar out. We'll be interested to see what's going on there. But nonetheless, still very, very interesting to watch what goes on tonight. Definitely stay tuned. Stay locked in. We'll have the rest. And obviously, I keep jumping off this list here, but we'll finally go through the final predictions. Nate Danielson's going to be picked at 11. I'm projecting for Nate Danielson picked at 11. 12 is going to be Tom Willander. Samuel Honzak, 13. Matthew Wood, 14. Colby Barlow, 15. Braden Yeager, 16. Dmitry Sumashev, 17. 18, Owen Moore. 19, Gabe Perreault. 20, Edward Saleh. 21, Quinton Musty. 22, Andrew Crystal. 23, Oliver Bunk. 24, Daniel Boo. 25, Lucas Dragisevich. 26, Ethan Gauthier. 27, Riley Height. Number 28, Otto Stenberg. Number 29, Callum Ritchie. Number 30, David Edstrom. Number 31, Adam Gajan. I'm not sure about that pick anymore, just with obviously the Habs traded away that pick yesterday, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. And lastly, 32 with Charlie Stramel. So the Adam Gajan pick, originally, the reason why I had them at where they were was because of the fact that Montreal sort of was looking at a goalie, and I think that might just be where we're looking at the Nashville Predators, trying to move up in the draft. Obviously, it's hosted in Nashville, so there's that much more reason for them to do so. We'll see whether or not they decide to trade Askarov, which I think is – my bad, I said 76. I mean Flyers. Yeah, no, all good. So, yeah, we'll see what the Flyers do tonight. I mean, they have the 7th overall pick. We'll see if they also want to move up. I think they're okay where they are. Be curious to see who they pick. Right now, I project them with Zach Benson, which I think is a good fit for them, especially the way they play and their play style. I think that'll work. And, now Bettman's trying to bring on the booze after trying to bring out all the Nashville Predators. So it's interesting to see sort of, obviously, it's not really important to the actual draft, but just to see, obviously, the reception that Bettman gets at each one of these. Normally, it's right to the reins of booze. I don't remember the last time he ever got cheered at one of these things. But anyway, good for him. He's having fun. All the Blackhawks. I assume the Blackhawks are now on the clock. So we'll see here. The number one overall pick. Remember, the number one overall pick is not the one that we're watching for tonight. We can pretty well, the Chicago Blackhawks are now on the clock. So we can assume here this is Bedard. If this isn't Bedard, I mean, I don't know who else. I mean, Fantilli's number 2, in my opinion. Number 2, far from. But where it gets interesting is whether or not Mishkov comes in at 2. And we'll see what goes on here. So we'll see what the Chicago Blackhawks want to do. This is where it gets interesting. Chicago Blackhawks have to take Bedard. I'm from Canada. I'm a Canadian fan. I've watched him at all the events that have happened with the IIHF. I have not seen a player in my 18 years of life that has dominated the World Juniors quite like Bedard has. So I'll be curious to see. Not even Connor McDavid was this good at his age. So we'll see whether or not the Blackhawks blow their pick on someone else. I don't see how it could be Mishkov, unless I think Mishkov would be the only one that could rival him, but I just don't see that happening. But at the end of the day, we will see what happens here, because this is going to be a very interesting draft. It's loaded. Oh, and the pick is in for the Chicago Blackhawks. We will see here. We can expect it is Connor Bedard. If it isn't Connor Bedard, I'm probably going to lose my mind. Just as a fan of the Canadian, as a Canadian fan, I just don't understand how Bedard is not the first pick. And at the end of the day, it has to be him. We'll see if it is. Here we go. They are coming up to the podium now. Kyle Davidson. We'll see if he absolutely pooches his franchise here. But nonetheless, here we go. We'll see what goes on. The pick is in. They're coming up to the stage. We'll see who it is. If it isn't Connor Bedard, this is about to be one of the craziest drafts of all time. Oh, and he's already laughing. He knows it's him. Now we'll see. We will see. Here we go. Kyle Davidson.
Would first like to recognize the incredible.
We got to recognize everyone first, and then we'll get to the pick. He's slowly taking it on. He likes to drag it out, as all the first people do. You got.
Congratulate the Vegas Golden Knights on their
Nah, we don't like Vegas. Boo. Yeah, no one likes Vegas. Sorry. I'm still angry about how Vegas won the cup this year. Any team that should have won it should have been them. So we'll see whether or not it is going to be Connor Bedard as the number 1 overall pick in this draft. Blackhawks select. Yep, Connor Bedard. Okay, so they didn't butcher it right off the bat. We got Connor Bedard going pick number 1 as expected. Now this is where the draft begins to get interesting. Obviously, this one was expected here. There were different tournaments, all these different, even his CHL journey with the WHL. There's no one here that could have taken his spot as number 1, and I'll stand by that. Now, this part in the draft, the number 2 pick, is where things get interesting. Whether the Anaheim Ducks decide to trade off their pick, which would be very surprising. I don't see them doing that, and we'll check Twitter here just to make sure. But I don't see them trading off this pick. I see them going Adam Fantilli, but this is where it gets interesting. There's also Leo Carlson, who's a very, very solid player, who I think could also fill this spot. But we'll see here whether or not there is going to be a move here. This is where this draft gets interesting. Fantilli makes sense. Carlson makes sense. Mishkov makes sense if Anaheim does not see themselves going up this year, next year, or the year after. Because at the end of the day, in my personal opinion, Mishkov is the second best player in this draft. It's just a matter if you trust rushing development and decide to go here. Because this part in the draft is where everything becomes to get interesting. If you are new here, please do hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already. And let me know down below who you think the number 2 overall pick is going to be. Or if I'm just crazy for believing that there's only 3 picks with at the end of the day, I don't see Carlson cracking Fantilli. I think at the end of the day, it's between two guys. You have Fantilli and you have Fantilli and Mishkov. Can't be between the 2 of them. But we'll see sort of what goes on here, whether there's another move. And I think there might be. I don't think there'll be another move, but you never know with these drafts. Teams do their research, and we'll see who knows. Maybe it's one of the guys from the U.S. development team. But nonetheless, it will be interesting to see what goes on here and what is the end result. So with that being said, Anaheim is going to be on the clock here in a few minutes. So we'll see. They've had, obviously they knew Bedard was going to go number 1. So they've had time as well to think this one through since the thing. They lost the first overall pick, which is unfortunate for them. But at the end of the day, we'll see who it's going to be. I just think at the end of the day, obviously Bedard, number 1, easy. Just the way he's played. I mean, he's MVP of pretty much every IHF tournament he was at, every single WHL game or with the Regina Pats. Off the chart player. Not surprising at all to see him go this well. But nonetheless, we'll see sort of what goes on here with the second pick. The second pick is where this draft really, really gets interesting. So they'll be on the clock here in just a little bit. And with that being said, take a look here. We'll take a look at another trade. Pick one right off the top here. We talked about the Sharon Govich trade earlier. So now let's talk about the New Jersey Devils and the San Jose Sharks. So this one was a 2023 6th-round pick as the 164th pick in exchange for the RFA Mackenzie Blackwood, who's currently an RFA, but he has the arbitration eligible. So what the Devils did here and why they traded away Mackenzie Blackwood was to make sure that they did not get stuck with a bad contract out of arbitration. Blackwood, middle of the range goalie, not necessarily going to blow your socks off, but he's still good enough to get a decent sum in arbitration. They get rid of that problem, and they get back a 6th-round pick, which is really not that much, but it does ensure, especially as a contending team, we've seen them make a few moves to get to this point. I think it's a great move for the New Jersey Devils. The San Jose Sharks is also a great deal. You look at what they're getting in. They're getting a pretty decent goalie, mid-range goalie who's RFA status, which means he's on the younger side. And overall, we look at a player like Blackwood where he's not necessarily in his prime yet, but he has room to grow. And it's a team like San Jose Sharks who are also on their way up. This trade makes a ton of sense for them. And now the Anaheim Ducks are on the clock. So we'll see sort of what they want to do here. Obviously, like I said, they've had a lot of time to figure out what's next. And I think if I had to guess, it's going to be Adam Fantilli. But we'll see. Plenty of time still left to make a move. And we'll get rid of this sheet of paper. First sheet of paper down. But with that being said, great spin. Oh, and the pick is in for the Anaheim Ducks. So we'll see what happens here. We'll see what happens. If there is, I think this pick isn't likely to be traded. There's two or three picks that have the opportunity to be moved. The Habs pick, number 1, I would start this one. This pick, there was an interview with Kent Hughes off the top of the program where he said, yeah, there's about a 50-ish% chance that we keep this pick tonight, which means, they're definitely looking at trading. And the other pick I'd be looking at here, and this is probably the best trade contender we're going to see tonight, is between the Nashville Predators and the Montreal Canadiens. And this is why they've already been in talks all night. When we look at what number 5 pick brings, it's either one of the guys from the U.S. National Team Development Program, which are pretty good players, or you get a guy like Mishkov. And I think if Nashville can get a guy like Mishkov, and I think if Mishkov's available, that pick with the Habs is gone. And I think they'll pay up to get him. Whether they've already said they're willing to trade Askarov. So that's going to be probably Askarov, a first, and the 15th overall pick, and some other pick. But we'll see what else it's going to be. Whether or not, they decide to do something else, the pick is in for the Anaheim Ducks. So I have to assume this pick is going to be Adam Fantilli. Whether it is or not, we will see. But so far, we are 1 for 1 in this prediction. So we'll see if we can keep it up. But nonetheless, this pick should be being announced shortly. However, the pick is in, but they haven't gone up yet. They have 45 seconds to get up onto the stage. So we'll see sort of what ends up happening here. I think there's plenty of moves that could happen. Whether or not they do, we will definitely see. So stay hydrated. It's important. With that being said, 30 seconds. So they should be making their way up. And here we go. The Anaheim Ducks are making their way up onto the stage here to announce their pick. We're looking at 3 guys. The rest, for the next 2 or 3 picks, you're looking at 3 guys. Fantilli, Carlson are probably going to be the next 2 to go, with the wild card of Matevi Mishkov. Mishkov in this draft really could go anywhere. I'd assume within the top 8. I don't see him going much past the Washington Capitals. However, we've seen crazier things in drafts before. So we'll see sort of where he goes. and whether or not, there's going to be something here. The Anaheim Ducks have now taken the podium, so we'll see who the pick is, whether it's Fantilli, whether it's Karlsson, whether it's Mishkov, or whether I'm completely off base here and it's someone else. But nonetheless, here we go.
We would like to welcome all our fans.
Oh, no, right, we got to thank people first. So thank you. I'll thank the viewers while we do this. I'd like to thank you all for watching this. If you haven't already, be sure to drop a like, subscribe if you haven't, and let me know. Say hi in chat. Let me know who your favorite team is in the chat. Oh, and they picked. I missed the pick. I think it's Leo Carlsson. Yeah, it's pretty sure it's Leo Carlsson.
You just mentioned a lot of talent up the middle, including this man, Leo Carlsson.
Leo Carlsson is the pick for the Anaheim Ducks. So that is surprising to me. I got to be honest. I was expecting that to be Fantilli, and we'll see sort of, if that has. Is it Owen? It's Owen. Yeah. Spelling's never been my strong suit. But nonetheless, this pick makes a ton of sense for the Anaheim Ducks. They're looking for players that can help them right now. Karlsson does that for them. Fantilli could have done that for them too. But at the end of the day, I do think Karlsson is still a great pick. There was really three options there. You had Mishkov, who wasn't going to help them right away, which is why I don't think that the Anaheim Ducks would have picked him. The Ducks are looking right now to contend. They have the pieces to contend. They just need sort of one final boost, and I do expect that to come through a trade sometime in the short future. Nonetheless, this is a good move for the Anaheim Ducks. Between Fantilli and Karlsson, they both make great sense. So, nonetheless, it's a good pickup. It's not a bad pickup at all. But we'll see here, whether this next pick here, which is the Columbus Blue Jackets, where their timeline necessarily isn't as short, right? Where the Ducks are trying to contend right away. They're focused in. They want a pick that's going to help them right now. Meanwhile, the Blue Jackets aren't necessarily focused in right now. They've made a few moves which are interesting. Whether or not they traded away is something to take note of. But at the end of the day, the Columbus Blue Jackets, I don't see taking Mishkov for one reason only. They're looking to contend right away this year too. I just don't know if it's going to be. I have to assume now the Blue Jackets are loving life because they just probably picked up Adam Fantilli, who in my opinion was the better of the prospects between Karlsson and Fantilli. But also I am biased as a Canadian, and I've seen Fantilli play at the World Juniors, at all these different things, where Karlsson's looked pretty good too. I don't know who would have been the better pick in my personal opinion, though. It has to be Adam Fantilli. So we'll see. Nonetheless, what's going on here? So the next pick here, the Columbus Blue Jackets. And now let's start talking about what Columbus has done. And they are one of those teams which are an interesting sort of mix. They made a few moves that are like, they're not blow your socks off moves, but they're enough just to raise an eyebrow. So we'll see sort of what goes on here, whether there's going to be something different, whether, for example, they go with Fantilli. I think Fantilli has to be the move for them, unless they want to go Mishkov. I don't see any of the U.S. National Team Development Program guys going yet, but nonetheless, it could happen. And I've been wrong. There might be something with Fantilli that hasn't been leaked to the public yet, where we look at, some of the other, some of the other things, but nonetheless, we'll see sort of what goes on here. I'm curious because this is going to be an interesting pick. This is where the draft probably gets more interesting. We've already had one pick where, it could be either guy. If there's something that hasn't been released about Fantilli, which is why the Ducks skipped on him, that might be something to take note of too. And I assume that Columbus also would have that. That could be a reason why that he might be returning back to Michigan at the end. He wouldn't basically go to the NHL if he were drafted. That could be a reason why the Anaheim Ducks ended up passing on him. Meanwhile, Karlsson, we could assume, because he's in the Swedish league, he'd just go straight to the NHL and he'd help them right away. But I'd be curious to see, that's why these NHL draft interviews are so important. It all starts with the handshake, but at the end of the day, it comes down to how do you answer the questions? Do you fit in within the team culture? Are you in line with the goals of the team? And I assume there must have been something off there with Adam Fantilli. But nonetheless, still an interesting pick. I do expect Mishkov to go 4. I think that's an underrated pick for the San Jose Sharks. But the Columbus Blue Jackets also might be it because they don't necessarily need him right away. I just don't see how they'll pass up an opportunity, especially with their moves that they've made to get to go out and get their defensemen. Well, we'll see what the move is here. Columbus's pick is in, so we'll see what the move is. They're going to head up shortly, I believe, to do it. But nonetheless, we'll see what happens here. But yeah, so we'll see what goes on here. Plenty of time left in this draft. Plenty of trades. I would love to have a trade shortly here that we can talk through. We're ready with the trade review on the other half of this board. Well, as soon as there's a trade, we're going to flip the board over. We're going to do a full trade review. And we'll flip back and forth here talking about trades every once in a while. But especially for this pick here, this pick is going to determine the rest of this draft, I think. I would be very, very shocked not to see this be Adam Fantilli, but I was also shocked to not see him go number 2. So we'll see what goes on here. There's plenty of time left in this draft. But nonetheless, the selection is up. So let's see who it is, what it is, and if the Columbus Blue Jackets are looking to pursue the postseason this year or if they're waiting for an extended period. Oh, right. We got to shake everyone's hands first. So while we do that, I just want to say thank you all for watching. If you'd like to drop a like, if you'd like to subscribing, and let me know down in the comments who your favorite team is. Nonetheless, here we go. John Davidson is reporting the pick.
Thank you, Nashville. We appreciate the great time you've shown us all.
Yep.
Congratulations.
Talk.
To a hockey lifer and a good friend, David Boyle, again, congratulations. Good man. Our fans back in Columbus, they're called the Fifth Line. They are at
So we'll see sort of where this pick goes. I think it's either going to be Fantilli. They're still thanking people.
I'd like to invite our general manager,
Jarmo Kekalainen is going to report the pick. This is going to be it. Here we go.
Columbus Blue Jackets are proud to select from University of Michigan.
Adam Fantilli. So it is Fantilli. So that makes sense, right? That's sort of the top 3 we had predicted originally. Now this is where the draft starts to get a little bit, it could go anywhere. There's no specific pick, in my opinion, that could. We'll see sort of what goes on here, right? Because there's no pick after this that is set in stone. The Sharks, in my opinion, are the team that drafts Mishkov. Just the way that they're built, just the way that their goals align in the future, that's what it has to be. But nonetheless, we'll see if there's something else there, whether or not, there's another team that comes in, swipes this pick. This pick, I don't think is going to be traded. The 5th overall pick, however, I think is where we might have our first trade of the night. We'll see if it is or not. But at the end of the day, it makes sense for them to trade that pick. Then we'll see if they do it. Just sort of the way that they're trying to do. And the Nashville Predators are a team I think are going to start that rebuild. And I think that's where, that 5th pick is going to come in clutch. But we'll see. Nonetheless, sort of where this goes, Fantilli is going to the Columbus Blue Jackets. I think it's actually a really good pickup for the Blue Jackets. It's going to help them right away. I think, especially with the development and sort of the better, for lack of better terms, lack of skill in Columbus. I think this is a huge pickup for the Blue Jackets that they can send him up right away. They give him the opportunity to play in the NHL where, some of these other teams, maybe not. Maybe he has to go back to Michigan for a year or two. I think by giving him this opportunity in the NHL, you can persuade him over. You can fish him in over from the NCAA into the spot. We'll see if they can do it. Obviously, I think that's why they're doing this move. As the number 3 pick, normally you'll end up in the NHL. But we'll see whether or not there's going to be a different move here, whether or not there's going to be something else. But nonetheless, this is where the draft gets interesting. The top 3 are done. We knew pretty well what the top 3 were going to be. Now it's anyone's game. Do they go with the NDTP guys, right? Where you have Smith and Leonard. Bill Smith, Brian Leonard. Or do you go with somebody else? Do you go with a guy like Matevy Mishkov, who in my opinion is the best pick in this draft, especially for a team that's not looking to contend right away, like the San Jose Sharks are not trying to contend. We talked about the trade with Blackwood earlier. He's a guy who's not really, he's in sort of the back end of his prime. He's 25. We'll see if he wants to go further. If they're going all in now, they don't have the basis to do so. They have Carlson too. which is a big portion of that San Jose Sharks team. Whether or not they want to move him still remains to be seen. I'll be curious to know, whether or not they decide to move something else. But I think it's still a good option, and I think this pick for the Columbus Blue Jackets makes a ton of sense, especially with where they're trying to go. From the looks of it, they're looking to turn that rebuild right around. Whether or not they do, who knows? But with that being said, what's done is done. Fantilli goes 3. So far, number 1, Connor Bedard, not surprising at all. 2, Leo Carlsson, a little bit surprising, but makes sense. 3, Adam Fantilli, makes sense too. We'll see if there's going to be a fourth pick here that's off the board. I don't see them going outside of the 2 NDTB guys with Will Smith and Ryan Leonard, as well as Matevy Mishkov. I have to assume it's one of the 3. If it isn't one of the 3, who knows, right? It could be anyone's game. But at the end of the day, I think it has to be one of the 3. And we'll see sort of who that is, whether or not, there's another person there. San Jose has a lot to think about here. And I think the best move, at least in my opinion, is Mishkov or trade away the pick. Because Mishkov is going to have a ton of value to some of these teams who are sort of backer end, who are about to head to the rebuild. A team like Pittsburgh, too, is an interesting one because what they could do, obviously I don't think they will, but you have a guy like Crosby, you have a guy like Malkin, you have all these Letang, you got a really, really veteran core. If they want, and they got a new GM in Dubas, so we'll see if they want to go full rebuild. They have the assets to trade up in this draft and get some high-end talent, especially you look at what they could get here. If they wanted to trade a guy like Malkin, you could get Mishkov, who's going to come in a few years. You could get a first and probably a late round pick, right? If you want to trade Crosby, you're probably getting a lot more than that. You're probably getting a few picks plus a few prospects, plus probably a guy like Erik Karlsson, plus some other form of payment. So I'll be curious to see sort of what happens next. Who is the next move in this draft? It really could be anybody. So we'll see sort of what happens. The San Jose pick is in now. So we'll see who they decided to go with. I think this one could be any range of people. We'll see. Obviously, plenty of time to figure that out. We'll see whether or not there's one specific pick. But yeah, so do you have any thoughts? Let me know down in the chat whether you think it's going to be higher pick, lower pick, but we'll see. Obviously, plenty to choose from here. So we'll see sort of who the guy is, who it's going to be for a team like the San Jose Sharks. And yeah, whether or not San Jose is going to take a guy who's off the board. Mishkov is likely going top 8. In my opinion, this pick is the one where Mishkov goes. It could be a different one. They could go with some of the NTDP guys, but we'll see sort of what happens. Mike Greer is going to hopefully make the pick, or announce the pick rather. So we'll see sort of what goes here. If you're new here, hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't, and say hi in the chat. Let me know who your favorite team is.
To make our pick is Sharks legend, NHL all-time games played leader, Patrick Marleau.
Oh, and Patty Marleau is going to come and report the pick. What a good-looking gentleman.
With the first selection overall,
See what he wants.
the Sharks are proud to select Will Smith from USA Toronto.
Wow, so they go Will Smith with the pick. Surprising to me, not surprising to many of the sort of simulators, but nonetheless, Will Smith goes at number 4 to the San Jose Sharks. Now, here is the kicker. We'll see, and I think this is where it happens. We'll see if it's no longer a no-trade night. We have a trade counter in the bottom left corner. We'll see if any of these trades get moved tonight. But nonetheless, interesting move for the San Jose Sharks. I think if they're looking to, rebuild, Will Smith is still a solid player. He's going to provide the offense for a team like the San Jose Sharks. But we'll see whether or not this was a bad pick in the long run. There's still Mishkov on the board. We'll see whether or not Mishkov is the move that's going to change this. But I do nonetheless think that Will Smith is a very, very solid pick for San Jose Sharks. We'll see, because there is a problem here. If Smith wants to go to Boston College, he's committed there for next year. We'll see whether or not they're going to be able to, figure this out. So we'll see. With that being said, this next pick here is the Montreal Canadiens pick, and there may be a trade, right? This is the pick that's been rumored to go. Kent Hughes was on the Sportsnet broadcast earlier today saying, there might be a trade that happens here. So we'll see if the Habs are going to move him. And at the end of the day, I expect if they are going to move them, this team right here, the Nashville Predators, the hometown draft team, are going to be the ones that are going to ring the bell saying, yes, we want him. They're probably going to look at a package, a first round, that first round, the 15th overall pick, the goaltender Roman Askarov, which is basically, if you remember back to the World Juniors, drives to be covered here. That's the guy that loves just to throw his stick willy-nilly. And the last one here, which is going to be an interesting one to take note of, is what else is in that deal. Whether it's, a little bit more, whether that be, a future second, a future third, maybe it's a second-round pick in this draft. Who knows what it might be, but I do expect this one to be something special. So I think this one is going to be the pick where finally we get to flip around the board here. We got the trade review already set up on the board here. We'll see if it's going to, happen tonight. We hope it does, because otherwise we're just reporting picks all night, which is still fun. You get to talk about all the different players. But nonetheless, I think we all would love a trade, so that way we can really get into the nitty-gritty of what actually is going on in the NHL today. Nonetheless, we'll see sort of what goes on here. The Montreal Canadiens are on the clock, which, in my opinion, is going to lead to a trade. I hope, for the Habs' sake, they do trade this pick. I think it's a good pick to trade. We'll see whether or not they want to, go off the board here. I think Mishkov's the pick. Leonard, obviously, is also not a bad pickup, but really could be anybody. Dvorsky, I think, also could go here, which I don't think the Habs fans are going to be too happy about, but I do think it's not a bad move if they do decide to do so. But nonetheless, it is an interesting move. We'll see whether or not something happens here. They have 2 minutes on the clock. No one's moving, which is strange, which means they probably already know who they're going with. So we'll see whether or not there's going to be a big move, right? This is, as we said, this is the move to change it, right? This is probably the pick everyone's looking at that's going to be traded. Ken Hughes is just sitting there. We'll see if anything moves. The last time the Habs had the 5th overall pick was in 2005, picking Carey Price. Remember him? Pretty good player. We'll see whether or not they decided.
Got the game face on, and they're saying, all right, we know what we're going to do here. We're just going to take our time and make that selection. But I have to think that we're going to start to see the draft, I think, start now.
Right. So now we'll see. We'll see whether or not it's going to be a big move. And I hope there's a trade here. I think that, and the pick is in, so I do not believe there'll be a trade. Unfortunately, we'll see if the Predators move up here. Maybe it's Arizona's pick. Who knows? Whether or not there's going to be a big move, and I am curious.
All right, we wait to see that. We'll know that in a matter of moments. But first, back to the floor.
So we'll see. We'll see what happens. And I think as the NHL Entry Draft goes on, there's always some intrigue as to what happens next. And we'll see if there's going to be a big move, and I hope there's a big move just because right now we're reporting picks, all fun and good. But until when we get to that trade review, it's going to get fun in this building. So we'll see. Oh, and Carey Price is walking up. Look at that. So look, it does appear that they're going to make the pick. So I would assume this is going to be Mishkov, just with sort of aligning with the goals. It could be Ryan Leonard too. We'll see if they decide to go off the board. I don't see them going off the board. Their off the board pick probably would be Dvorsky. But we'll see. Obviously, plenty of time left still to be made. What the Montreal Canadiens are going to do next, there's plenty of action here. But nonetheless, here we go. Montreal Canadiens are making the pick. Kent Hughes stepping up to the mic, who's you're probably going to thank a bunch of people. Yep, so they're going to thank some people. So, as always, after every one of these, when they start to thank people, we get to thank you for watching. So thank you for watching. If you're new here, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and let me know down in the chat who your favorite team is. Perhaps you're a Habs fan coming to celebrate the pick. So Carey Price is coming up, and here we go. This is where things begin to get interesting. We'll see whether or not there's a major move here. David Reinbacher? Are they going Reinbacher?
We planned it that way. David Reinbacher.
Wow. Holy. Oh my God. They went David Reinbacher.
Yes, the draft does start now. That's the first defenseman. He's on screen. If you haven't heard much about him, 6'2", 195 pounds, and an elite player and a high prospect taken fifth overall.
Wow.
With his family right now, we actually have a bike on him, so I'm not sure he's hearing us. But David, I just want to say congratulations.
Wow, they went Reinbacher. Oh my golly me. That is nuts. That is crazy. Oh. Wow, they went way off the board. That's crazy. Wow. Okay, so that's the first off the board pick. We'll write his name down here. So that is why you continue to come out to these things, because you see something new every single day. But nonetheless, this pick, it's still a good pick in hindsight. Like, it's not one of those picks where, you know, they're completely throwing the bag here, but it is off the board, to put it nicely. And I'm very, very surprised that they go with a guy like David Reinbacher. That's just like it's off the board. I was expecting either, you know, a guy like, you know, Mishkov, Ryan Leonard, Dvorsky. I thought was probably going to be the off the board pick, but they went even further down. They picked up David Reinbacher. Must have had a very, very good interview process, because he was ranked pretty like not low, but he was ranked, you know, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 by all of the mock drafts out there. So we'll see. You know, that is probably the first off the board pick. And they're saying on the program, you know, this is where the draft really starts. So we'll see whether or not, you know, this is going to actually start to hit stuff. Maybe that's why Nashville wanted to trade up. I still think Nashville's trying to get Mishkov. So they're going to try and trade down as low as possible. It's hard to say who it might be now. The Coyotes, my opinion, are Mishkov. I just don't see a world. They don't care about winning right away. They're a team that's trying to get the best player, and I think the best player in this draft, aside from Connor Bedard, is Mutabi Mishkov. They don't need him right away. The pick has to be Mishkov unless something crazy is going on. Obviously, there's plenty of crazy stuff. But that being said, crazy picks. Obviously, this is what happens at the NHL draft. People start to lose their minds. Reinbacher, once again, not a bad pick for them. So I'm not saying he's terrible, but it is very much off the board, which is what we look at here, especially when there's other opportunities. So nonetheless, we'll see here what goes on. The Coyotes are now on the clock. The Coyotes are teams that like to trade picks. even though they're backed by the NHL, which is a large part why Bettman keeps getting booed at these things, the Coyotes are still in Arizona. We'll see if that gets moved. The expansion draft, or an expansion team or sort of a relocation of a team, I hope that they do it. I hope that they can just say, you know what, you guys can't figure it out in Arizona. Let's move. Get them out of there. Get them somewhere new. I like the Quebec idea, but at the same time, they need somewhere. They need something new somewhere. Those are some very interesting colored suits. They're going matching suits, which is always a ballsy pick. But nonetheless, here we go. David Reinbacher, the highest picked Austrian-born player, right up there with Thomas Vanek, and Marco Kasper was 8th. Rossi was 9th. Grabner was 14th. So, nonetheless, Reinbacher was not rated by Central Scouting back in September, which tells you really everything you need to know about this guy. He's come on the last few months. Sure, he's played well, but I don't know if he's good enough to be the 5th overall pick in a draft room. Tevye Mishkov is still undrafted. Ryan Leonard's still undrafted. But we'll see. There's plenty of time left. Zach Benson's also up there. His name is probably in there. I had Ryan Leonard going 6th. I'm struggling to see a world now where Tevye Mishkov is not the pick. And we'll see sort of what goes on here, whether or not there's something else. But at the end of the day, here we go, right? That's part of the fun. The Coyotes pick is in. So we'll see whether or not there's going to be something else here. Remember, the later on we go, the more there's going to be a trade. More likely that there'll be a trade and there's less proper sort of stuff. So we'll see sort of what goes on there. When we look here, the picks that still remain to be traded and that I expect to be traded, this pick right here, the 15th overall pick, the Nashville Predators. I think this pick is the pick that'll get moved because the Predators have already shown interest in moving that pick. Another pick that I would not be surprised to move is right over here, the 28th overall pick, the Toronto Maple Leafs. The Leafs are a team that really needs a Stanley Cup suit. The fans are beginning to riot. There's going to be a big move at some point. It doesn't make sense for the Leafs to hold on to that pick. They don't need prospects right now. They need talent. They need to start winning. That's why, in my opinion, Toronto Maple Leafs are a team to watch here to move that pick. Another interesting one is the Colorado Avalanche, which are really interesting. Hey, man, I just want to pop and say how you're doing. Glad to see your stream and join in. Welcome, Steven. Good to have you back. It's been a while since the World Junior stream, but it's good to have you back. Welcome on in. With that being said, and I hope you're doing good as well. I'm doing quite well here. It's been quite the draft so far. Definitely interesting to see what's going on here. So they're going to congratulate people. But we'll see sort of where the pick goes. It has to. I think it has to be Mishkov. I don't see how it can't be Mishkov. We'll see though. Like,
and to make our selection, I'd like to invite Ryan Janikowski.
Okay, so we'll see. Is Mishkov the pick?
The Arizona Coyotes are proud to select from Lokomotiv Yaroslavl Dmitry Simashev.
Dmitry Simashev, gentlemen, a little bit off the board with a lot of different names being thrown out there. This wasn't the name many of us anticipated. What do you think of this? How are you saying?
The first 2005 forward player to play in the KHL. And good
Well, I was only, 13 picks off?
You go back to his time in the NHL.
11 pick. I was only 11 picks off. I was close. Simashev goes before Bedard. Well, I'm rethinking everything now. This is I'm beyond lost. I am not going to lie to you. Dmitry Simashev goes to the Arizona Coyotes. Yet another thrown away pick by the Coyotes. Let's just keep them in Arizona. Let's be honest. Let's just get rid of that team. Wow. Crazy pick. I thought when they started with the Russian name, I thought they were saying that it's going to be Mishkov, but it's not. No, it's Dmitry Simashev, which is off the board. But nonetheless, still a good pick. I originally had him going to the Detroit Red Wings. But still, it's not one of those picks where, you know, it's a bad pick, but it's just one of those picks where it doesn't make sense. Not now. In a few rounds, maybe. You know, they have the 12th overall pick to draft Simashev, but they're not going to take him there, which to me just doesn't make sense. Nonetheless, Simashev goes to the Arizona Coyotes, off the board. But nonetheless, got the Canadians. I was wondering if you're going to wear the reverse retro one, lol. Yeah. Yeah, so to be honest, if Boston does anything in this draft, I'll throw it on, but I don't see them making anything in this draft so far. But nonetheless, if Boston does make a trade tonight, the Bruins jersey is going on. If Boston's anywhere on this board, or if there's a trade, or if Boston really just speaks up and says, we're going to trade someone tonight, the jersey's going on. But we're not at that point yet, so we'll see sort of what goes on here. Simashev is a wild pick. I wouldn't expect it from anyone else, let's be honest here. It is the Arizona Coyotes. But to me, that is just an off-the-board pick to the extreme. It's crazy to me, I'll be honest. And here goes the Philadelphia Flyers, who are now on the clock. So if we're following this, which is my draft list from the start of the night, let's see how many we're right so far. We got the first one right, which is good, right? The next two picks, I got them flipped, so that's acceptable. Then there was Will Smith, who I had going at 5 with reverse of Mishkov, so that's okay. And then we have David Reinbacher, who I had at 9, who's at number 5, so that's 4 picks off. So we're starting to get a little bit extreme. And then we have Dmitry Simashev, who I had going at 17, who is at number 6. I am struggling tonight to get any of these right. We'll see if the Philadelphia Flyers will help me here with who's number 7 do I have on this list? Zach Benson. Zach Benson is the player who I have at number 7. But at the same time, Ryan Leonard still hasn't gone. Mishkov still hasn't gone. Dvorsky, who I had at 8, still hasn't gone. So I think it could be any one of those 4, or it really could be anyone off the board. But nonetheless, we'll see what goes on here, whether or not there's something else, whether it's someone else. But we'll see. You know, it's going to be an interesting thing. Interesting to see how things go. Like I said, as always, with the whiteboard. Thanks for sharing your takes and thoughts. Great to follow along. Yeah, thanks for coming in. Thanks for tuning in. Always good to have you around. Missing these live streams for a while. So good to have everyone out. If you are new here, be sure to like, subscribe, and say hi in the chat. Tell me your favorite team. That way we can make it a little bit more personalized just for you. But nonetheless, the 7th overall pick, I don't know if they'd be the team to trade. There might be a trade here with what they're trying to do. You know, the Flyers, sort of that mid-range team. I think they're headed towards a rebuild. So with that being said, there might be the pick of Mishkov. There's an argument to be made for a guy like Mishkov, right? Where, you know, you're not getting him for the first few years, but nonetheless, you're going to get him at some point. I think at the end of the day, he can't fall after 8. If he falls after 8 and the Red Wings are going to grab him in a heartbeat. If they can get Mishkov, Red Wings are grabbing him. They're probably sitting here right now like this. Please, 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 please. And if they are, okay, so the Flyers are making their pick. They're headed up. We'll see.
So what's going to happen now with Philadelphia at 7 potentially?
Well, there's a lot of different options.
There's so many different options for the Flyers here that they could go with, and we'll see who it's going to be. I think Mishkov is definitely a pick. You got to remember, Mishkov was at one point the number 1 projected pick, which means he's still good. Look at the guy like Adi Rat, right? Ratti, or however you say his name. Changes every time you hear it. He went from the number 1 pick to number, I believe it was 52 to the Islanders-ish, 52-ish. Yet he got flipped in the Bo Horvat trade. So it's interesting to see sort of where the first round picks go. I think the Flyers have to go with Mishkov here. But nonetheless, we'll see. Here we go. The pick is just about to be announced. We'll see who it's going to be. I'd be very, very, very shocked to see it not being Mishkov. I just don't understand.
We've had a very good time. It's going to get more fun. I would like to thank
Here we go.
Boyle He was my general manager with the Washington.
We'll see here whether or not there's going to be a trade as we hit the 8 o'clock mark on today. We'll see whether or not something happens. Here we go. Danny Briere is going to announce the pick. We'll see what it's going to be.
With the seventh
Got to be Mishkov.
selection of the draft, Flyers are proud to select from St. Petersburg
There
in
we
the
go.
AHL, Matvei Mishkov.
Okay, Mishkov is now picked. It's taken them long enough, but Mishkov is now off the board to the Philadelphia Flyers. That is a great pickup for the Flyers. I am shell-shocked he fell that low. But nonetheless, Mishkov is off the board at 7, which makes sense to definitely grab him then. It makes sense. I don't understand how it would fall that low. I have a feeling the Flyers are in the same boat here. They're like, huh? We have a shot at Mishkov. Like that is like we talked about off the board picks. Mishkov at 7 is an off the board pick. The only reason why he doesn't go earlier in this draft is because he's missing for 2 years or 3 years or however long he stays in Russia. But nonetheless, that pickup might just be the best pick of the draft. Picking up Mishkov, yes, he's not eligible right away, but it doesn't matter for probably half these teams, if not more. So nonetheless, crazy pick here. There's probably a reason why he didn't go earlier aside from that. But nonetheless, Mishkov is going to the Philadelphia Flyers. We'll see if there's anything else there. There may or may not be a trade. I'll fix the C for you guys. But it's just an off-the-board pick, and we've seen a few of those so far. Just way off the board, and it makes no sense. But Simashev goes up to 6. They pick the Russians back-to-back. You got Simashev at 6, Mishkov 7. So we'll see sort of if there's any other moves here. We'll sort of refresh your brains. The original idea for the Nashville Predators, they wanted to move into the top 5. They did not move into the top 5, so we'll see if that pick is still willing to be traded, whether or not they're going to try and move back. I think, at least in my opinion, the farther down we go on this list, the more trades are going to be. The Toronto pick, to me, does not make sense why they're still keeping it, despite they're a playoff contender. Vegas's pick, maybe. We'll see. I wouldn't be surprised to see that 28 overall pick go to a contending team, with, a solid player like maybe, look like Marner, or maybe like a Nylander. Trying to get rid of their assets, I think, is going to be huge for them. But nonetheless, still an interesting thing. Like Mishkov is probably the second, you could argue second best player on this list. One of the big issues for him was, of course, Russia not being able to play at any of the World Junior Tournament or any of the junior tournaments, IHF tournaments. Because if they would have been there, I don't think he falls to 4. Just being able to see his talent, right? Like you look at Bedard. The reason why he's become the unanimous number 1 is because we got to see him at the World Juniors, the World U8, like just everything, right? Look at the last couple of years. Bedard has played with the best of the best, and he has dominated. Like every stretch of his career, even in the WHL, he has dominated, which is just off the chart. We'll see whether or not there's going to be something else here. But with that being said, very, very interesting thing. It's crazy. I am shocked Mishkov falls that low. But with that being said, Washington is now on the clock. We'll see where Washington wants to go. Okay, they have their pick in. I think it's got to be Ryan Leonard at this point, unless they want to go Dvorsky. I don't see anybody else here. I think Ryan Leonard's gone too low now. I think it's a steal at 8 to get a guy like Ryan Leonard. But we'll see. Still interesting. I mean, this draft has been so crazy. I think Philly's sitting there saying, how the heck did we just get Mishkov after, being stuck in spot 7? But nonetheless, still really, really good for them. Like, I think most teams would have picked Mishkov earlier, just the fact, even with the fact that he's gone for 2 years. But nonetheless, still an interesting thing. We'll see if there's anything else here. But with that being said, if you are new here, please do drop a like, hit the subscribe button if you haven't, and say hi in the chat. Let me know who your favorite team is, and whether you agree with any of their moves in the last week or two. Obviously, I think the large majority of teams have made some questionable moves, to put it nicely. But with that being said, be sure to let me know down below whether you agree with their decisions, disagree, or if you want to see a move made, let me know what that move is, and we can talk about it here in the chat while we wait for the Washington Capitals to pick with the 8th pick of the draft. It's going to be an interesting move here, what they go with. I think there's still plenty of options. I think there's quite a few moves that they can make. We'll see, they have the opportunity here to go with really anybody, but we'll see who it's going to be. They are making their way up to the podium here to make their announcement. I think Ryan Leonard is the pick, and I don't really see anybody else being that pick, but we'll see. I mean, there's plenty of draft picks that are on the board here. So pick 8, Washington Capitals. Their pick is in. They're taking the podium now. I have to assume it's going to be Ryan Leonard. And I'll be honest, I actually thought that Mishkov was going to fall to 8 here. I wasn't sure if Philly would take him, but he did. So Philly took Mishkov, which means that Washington is going to go with someone different. And we'll see who that someone different is. I have to assume it's going to be someone who is half decent. But we'll see. I mean, plenty of time left. With that being said, we'll see sort of where they go, right? Pick 8. The selection is in. They're on the podium. We'll see who's going to take the stand. Oh, they're not sure where to stand yet, and here we go. We're going to take the podium.
The Washington Capitals would like to acknowledge David Poyle's longtime contribution to our
So
organization.
they're giving their thank yous. So with that being said, interesting draft so far, definitely. But that being said, obviously quite the draft, and we'll see sort of what else goes on. Oh, and they made their pick. I think that was Ryan Leonard.
So, Jason, you had mentioned Ryan Leonard earlier.
So Ryan Leonard does go here at number 8 to the Washington Capitals. That is an excellent pickup for them. I think really they're going to quite enjoy that. It's a great pick.
I got a Stokes crush on this guy. I'm not going to deny that. Listen,
Physical guy. He's going to play well, and I think he's really going to fit in out in Washington. So we'll see sort of whether or not, Leonard is the move, and I think he is going to be the move. And I think he's probably the best move for the Capitals here. Just with the skill that he possesses, the size that he has, I think it's a great move for the Washington Capitals to pick up a guy like Leonard. But with that being said, we still have a few guys still yet to be picked. We'll see sort of where they fall in here. We'll look at the number 9 pick with the Detroit Red Wings. Be curious to see whether or not they want to trade that pick. They do have the number 17 pick. We'll see if that pick is going to be moved. But nonetheless, very, very interesting. We'll see whether or not there's going to be something there. Obviously, we're starting to get down into the draft. We got the 9th overall pick now. The farther down we go into this part, the more trades there's going to be. And I'd be curious to see if there's any big players, who are going to a different team this year. But we'll see. Obviously, plenty of time still to be had. And we'll see, obviously, I think when we look at picks that still could be moved, number 15, they've already reported trying to be moving into that top 5, but they didn't. So we'll see if that's still an option. Askarov was on the table for the Nashville Predators. We'll see if he's going to be moved. But with that being said, when we look ahead here, number 9 pick belongs to the Detroit Red Wings. Who they're going to go with, yes, is really up for debate. There's Zach Benson. There's no name for that. Dalibor Dvorsky, I think, isn't the best of options, but I do expect him probably to be the pick for the Red Wings. They do sort of like that bigger size that Dvorsky will bring. We'll see whether or not it's going to be him, whether or not it's going to be someone from like St. Louis who goes with that. I think, and I've sort of had this hunch here, where that's actually going to be Axel Sandin-Pellikka going to the St. Louis Blues. For one reason, and that's because when we look at the player, Torrey Krug, who they're trying to ship out right now, very, very, very similar play styles to that of the St. Louis Blues, Torrey Krug. They pick Pelika. I think Pelika is a replacement for Krug, and I do think it's a good move for the St. Louis Blues to pick up a replacement for Krug, who they've originally had. But nonetheless, we'll sort of see what the move is here. With obviously the 9 pick, could be anyone. The Detroit Red Wings are now on the clock. We'll see whether or not they have any sort of acquisition here. We'll see. So with that being said, 2 minutes 30 seconds for the Detroit Red Wings. Whether or not they make a big acquisition here, who knows? Whether they make a trade. Oh, is there a trade? Oh, never mind. Sorry, I got excited there. I thought there was a trade. But in fact, they were just going down to the draft floor to get an interview. I was so excited. I thought we were finally going to get a trade, but we're not, unfortunately. So with that being said, we're still on number 9 pick to the Detroit Red Wings. We'll see if they decide to move that pick. I don't see them moving that one. Number 10, I think, is where we get interesting. Number 11, the Vancouver Canucks pick, is an interesting move. Whether we want to see whether we see that pick getting moved, still remains to be seen. 12 pick, Arizona, who knows? They've already messed up 1 pick. We're going to see who they drop down on the list this time. Who knows, right? Like, when you look at the Arizona Coyotes, they're just a joke of a franchise. We'll see whether or not they're going to go completely berserk here. Pull one completely out of the blue. Maybe they pick, so just for reference, they picked, I've ever done a projection video. They picked Dmitry Simashev, who I had going 17. They had him going they took him at 6. So we'll see whether or not the Arizona Coyotes go completely off the board. They've already gone a little bit off the board. We'll see if they go completely off the board. I would not be surprised to see them do that. But nonetheless, if you are new here, please do like, subscribe, say hi in the comment or say in the chat. Let me know who your favorite team is and what moves you'd make if you were the GM of that team. Please do let me know. But with that being said, very, very interesting times for this NHL draft. We've had some crazy picks so far. We had Matevy Mishkov, the one-time first overall pick, or projected first overall pick, fall to number 7, which is very, very interesting. We'll see whether or not that's going to be a big move. But nonetheless, we'll see sort of what goes on here. So the Detroit pick is in. They're walking up to the stage now. We'll see what goes on here. Obviously, there's a lot of different options for the Detroit Red Wings, who they're going to go with. I think if I have to pick one, it is going to be Zach Benson. I think that's the obvious pick for the Red Wings. We'll see whether or not they do. But I think Benson probably is the best player skill-wise. And normally in the top 10, you want to pick the best player and less about positional acuity. But I think the Red Wings here go with a guy like Zach Benson or maybe Dalibor Dvorsky. I think it's one of the two. I'm sure they're going to pull one completely out of the blue here with Stevie I. Stevie Yzerman loves to go off the board here, so we'll see where he goes.
Also, I'd like to congratulate the Vegas Golden Knights on the Stanley Cup championship.
Boo. Okay.
The 9th pick in the draft, the Red Wings select from the Brandon Wheat Kings center Nate Danielson.
Nate Danielson goes at number 9 to the Detroit Red Wings. Now, this is an interesting pick. I did have him going at number 11, so not that far off. But nonetheless, Nate Danielson does go to the Detroit Red Wings at number 9, which is a pretty solid pick for them. And whenever Steve Yzerman makes a pick, I trust that pick because that guy seriously knows how to do well. Nonetheless, Nate Danielson to the Detroit Red Wings at number 9. So an interesting pick. Still yet to be made any trades. We'll see if anything ends up getting moved. But nonetheless, it's still an interesting play. We'll see what goes on here. You know, whether or not St. Louis Blues want to make a move here, I think they're the team to keep an eye on. I think Nashville's the team to keep an eye on, especially at home, right? When we take a look at these drafts, the location matters. And in this case, Nashville, a home team, look back at Montreal, they made a bunch of moves while it was in Montreal, right? They made the Kirby Dach move. They made the Romanov move. They made all these different moves with the crowd behind them who they're all celebrating. So it's very, very interesting to see. We'll see sort of what goes on here. But nonetheless, Nashville, I think, is a pick that we want to keep an eye on here, whether that gets moved. Pittsburgh is another one. Did we have a new GM here with Kyle Dubas? Whether or not he's going to try and make a lasting first impression. And speaking of lasting first impressions, there's one more pick I want to take on sort of highlight here, highlighting it all night. But with this pick right here, number 28, which is the Toronto Maple Leafs pick. It's a really, really odd pick to have for the Leafs, who are a contending team and see themselves as a contending team. But we'll sort of see, what goes on there. So Danielson is the pick for the Detroit Red Wings. I am very, very interested to see what happens next. Obviously, with number 10, right? We take a look at number 10. That is the pick for the St. Louis Blues. I've been saying for the last week or so that it's going to be Axel Sandin-Pellikka. For one reason only, they're shipping out Torrey Krug, rather. So we'll see if Krug and Pellikka, who play very, very similar games, both small defensemen and play very, very similar games, are going to Pellikka will be his replacement for Krug. I think that makes the most sense. We'll see here if that pick is something else. I expect it to be Sandin-Pellikka. We will see nonetheless. The St. Louis Blues are now on the clock. We'll see whether or not they make an off-the-board pick. They seem to be doing that. But nonetheless, if you are new here, please do drop a like, subscribe if you haven't, and let me know down in the comments who your favorite team is and what move you'd make if you were the GM of that team. Well, that being said, Nate Danielson, solid player, Brandon Wheat Kings, very, very pretty respectable team, and he plays well. And obviously, when I like to say when Steve Yzerman makes a move, it's always an A+ because it'll work out. But nonetheless, we'll see sort of what goes on next year with St. Louis Blues at 10. Who they go with is once again, it's up in the air. It really could be anybody, but we will see whether or not there is another move. But if I had to guess, Sandin-Pellikka is the move. I think it makes the most sense for Sandin-Pellikka to be the move. But we'll see whether or not there is another move like that I don't see coming. But we'll see, right? So with that being said, St. Louis Blues are on the clock. Maybe they trade the pick off. Who knows? If they do, we have full trade review, trade analysis coming up, which is going to be very exciting. We don't do many live trade reviews. But with that being said, we are going to do one. So we'll see how it goes. Hopefully it goes well. Be sure to stay tuned for that. But if you are new here, once again, be sure to like, subscribe. Let me know down in the comments who your favorite team is and which trade or move you'd make to improve your team. Or, with that being said, make your team really bad so that way you can get a high draft pick. We'll see sort of what goes on next here. Whether or not there's a big move, we'll see. I think that, once again, the 15th pick is one to watch. Penguins pick as well is an interesting pick. Whether or not they decide to move it. The Arizona Coyotes, once again, you never know what they're going to do. They never seem to know what they're going to do either. So we'll see if that pick gets moved. I think there's the opportunity for that pick to be moved, but I'm not quite sure yet. Another pick I'd take note of is the 19th overall pick with Chicago. Now, Chicago's pick is an interesting pick for one reason and one reason only. With Chicago, they've already picked once in this draft with Connor Bedard, and they got Taylor Hall, right? So there's two players. That's your left winger. That's your center. Your right winger right now is Andreas Athanasiou. He's a good player, don't get me wrong. But there are better, and I think that first-round pick, that 19th overall pick, is one that could get you some better assets. But we'll see. Obviously, there's plenty of time still. There's plenty of trades, plenty of draft picks still to be made, and we'll see if there's any sort of change, whether or not, even look down the list here with the Rangers. The Rangers are another team here. It doesn't make sense for them to have a draft pick. They don't really need it. They need to get that for that next stage, and I think the Rangers are a team that could do that. Another one I'm looking at here, Colorado, they got 2 picks now. So we'll see if they want to make an interesting move. Obviously, that was Montreal's pick, which they traded off, and the New Hook deal, which we'll get to in just a little bit. We'll sort of talk about that once we get to that trade. But nonetheless here, we have 2 Colorado first-round picks as a contending team, which normally raises the red flag saying, okay, what are you up to? What's coming next? Is there a big move that we haven't seen yet that they've traded down? In theory, they traded down because they do already have the 27th pick. They need a second pick, which probably means they're trading down so that way they can trade the higher pick without having to trade the higher pick. If that makes any sense, they can trade, okay, we have the 27th pick. We're going to trade the 27th pick. Don't worry about don't worry about giving us back that lower pick. We already have it. We're good. Just give me a really good player. The St. Louis Blues are now up and about to announce the pick. If I had to guess, Axel Sandin-Pellikka is the move here. I wouldn't be surprised to see it be someone else, but my theory here is Axel Sandin-Pellikka because they're trying to move Krug. Wow. Okay, so with Dvorsky, which makes sense once again. Dalibor Dvorsky is still a great player. I did have him going a little bit higher just because of his talent, and he's got size too. So he's sort of a well-rounded player. He's a physical guy. We'll see whether or not there's going to be a move for him at some point in the future. But I do expect him to flourish pretty well in St. Louis. He plays that sort of style. And we'll see whether or not, Dvorsky is going to be a big part of the St. Louis Blues in the future. I think he has the potential. But we'll see. He's a really solid, well-rounded player. But we'll see. He's played in Sweden, so he's had that pro style. And we'll see, what else is part of this team's plan. They do have another pick coming up, 25th overall pick from Toronto. That was a part of the Ryan O'Reilly deal. We'll see whether or not that's going to be a change in scenery. I would not be surprised to see that pick get moved. Perhaps they move even further up in the draft. Still remains to be seen. But with that being said, we'll see what else is here. They got the 11th pick coming up with the Vancouver Canucks. And I think after we get past 11, this part of the board here is where we get into our trades. And make sure to stay tuned for the trades. We're going to be doing live trade reviews, which we haven't actually ever done before. But we're going to do a live trade review, assuming there is a trade tonight. I really do hope there will be one. But with that being said, we'll see, right? And Vancouver, number 11. We'll see sort of where they want to go. Plenty of options. I really would not be surprised to see Axel Sandin-Pellikka go here. He is one of those players where, especially in Vancouver, they don't really look at size as much for their defensemen. You look at sort of their top-end defensemen. You got Quinn Hughes, right? You got all these sort of smaller guys. I think he'd fit quite nicely alongside here. But with that being said, plenty of options here. If you are new here, please do hit the like button. Subscribe if you haven't. And let me know down in the chat who your favorite team is, number one, and what moves you'd make to make your team either better, worse, try and tank for a draft pick. However you'd improve your team in the future, let me know how you do it down in the chat below. Look forward to chatting. But with that being said, number 11 pick here. Very, very interesting. Dalibor Dvorsky is number 10 to the St. Louis Blues. So we'll see whether or not that is going to help them in the future. I really do like it. I think he's definitely got projectability in terms of what he can do. We'll see whether or not he's going to be able to do big things. He did play for the Slovakian team. We'll see at the Holyfield Gretzky Cup. We'll see sort of, whether or not that move is going to cost them in the long run. Obviously, once again, we're looking too far ahead, but a guy like Axel Sandin-Pellikka, in my opinion, fills the void that they have with Torrey Krug and slot him in right away. And I think he sort of fills what the Blues need there. But at the same time, once again, Dvorsky, not a bad pick. Just a little bit different than what I would have done. Obviously, I'm not a GM right now, so I can't say too much. But when we look at the Vancouver Canucks, 2:30 left on the clock here before they make their pick. They are on the clock. We'll see what move they make. I think it's going to be interesting. Arizona's pick, we'll talk about this next pick here, number 12, is an interesting pick. And I'm curious to see sort of what they do, because I think it's going to be one of those moves where it really could be anything, or even more so, they could go completely off the board and try and trade that pick despite being a rebuilding team. We've seen them do some wacky stuff. They picked Dmitry Simashev at number 6. In the original projections for me, I had him at 17. So we'll see sort of what actually happens here. Whether or not there's some crazy move. It's definitely going to be interesting. Definitely one to watch. What do you mean Krug is leaving? Yeah, so Krug is on his way out. It's likely, it's been rumored at least, that it'll be Boston. That'll be the one that picks him up. That's been a rumor going around, but he's likely on his outs on his outs in St. Louis. We'll see whether or not there's going to be a big move. But from what I've seen so far, it's likely going to end up being in Boston. We'll see if Vancouver decides to.
Now is when I start to think that we're going to see a run of a couple of defensemen defenseman then.
No. Okay. So I thought there might have been a trade there. There was not a trade. It's just they're making their pick. The pick is in for the Vancouver Canucks. This is where it gets interesting. I think Sandin Pellikka might be where he goes. If not, Arizona as well. Team to watch. If not, Buffalo for sure, I think, is where he lands. In my opinion, Sandin Pellikka is probably the next best option on this list. Maybe Zach Benson is the only one I would say could get in there. It'll be interesting to see whether or not there's something else there. But nonetheless, Vancouver pick is in. They're headed up to the podium now, and we'll see whether or not there's a big move. But with that being said, pick is in Vancouver. Whether or not they decide to go, there's plenty of options on this list. Zach Benson, I think, is a very, very solid candidate. But I also see Axel Sandin Pellikka, who fits more appropriately, I think, in Vancouver. But we'll see. Obviously, there's other players on this list that haven't been picked yet. And we'll look at sort of who I originally had was Nate Danielson, who did go number 9 to the Detroit Red Wings. So we'll see whether or not that move is going to change something. With that being said, Vancouver Canucks have taken the podium with the pick in. They're about to announce their selection. Oh, maybe they're not. I think they forgot how to take the podium, so there's going to be a little bit.
Vancouver Canucks proud to select from Rögle, Swedish Junior League, Tom Willander.
Oh, so they went Tom Willander. So they did sort of go a little bit off the board. I had Tom Willander at 12, so not really that far off the board, but far enough. It's one pick down. In my opinion, it's still a great pick. Obviously, with the Swedish guys, that's sort of what my original sort of vision was, right? Tom Willander, Swedish guy, very, very solid player. And I think he's going to bring quite a bit to the team in Vancouver. He's going to have the ability to grow. I'm not sure he's going to make the lineup right away, but he is going to have the option to win his spot in Vancouver. And I think he's still a pretty solid enough player to make it if he doesn't. But nonetheless, it's very, very interesting here to see sort of what happens next. I think when we look at this as a whole, this was pretty set in stone. There wouldn't be many trades. I'm going to look through the first 11 picks at least. There haven't been too many surprises. There's been, in my opinion, one sort of surprise with Simashev going so early. I had him at 17. So we'll sort of see here. Mishkov at 7 was also sort of a surprise. But after the first 11, it's pretty well established and it's set in stone. We'll see number 12, Arizona. I think we could see a Zach Benson pick here. Perhaps Axel Sandin Pellikka could be another option here for the Arizona Coyotes. Or they could throw a complete wild card, with the old Uno reverse and say, no, we're going to trade this pick because we don't want to do well. But we'll see sort of what goes on here. I am curious to see who goes next. I hope Krug goes back to Bruins. Yeah, I have a feeling. I have a feeling that he will. Just sort of what we've seen. I think the Hall move earlier would that be 2 or 3 days ago, was sort of the first move of many for the Bruins, who were really starting to try and rebuild around sort of younger, more talented-ish players. Part of their big issue, I think, is their management. Obviously, you go from loving Don Sweeney to hating Don Sweeney, then back to loving Don Sweeney. You never really win with Don Sweeney, and I think that's part of the problem is that, sure, they're clearing cap with the Taylor Hall move, but you get nothing back for Taylor Hall. Let's be honest here. There's nothing back in return. And then on top of that, it's reported today that Bertuzzi's going to test free agency anyway, where he's going to get more money, likely from his home team, where he just came from, Detroit, which he likes it there. And they're going to lose Bergeron. They're going to lose Krejci. So right now, Boston is in a world of hurt. And in large part, I think there's a problem with management that they aren't really considering. I hope Boston does something soon as a Bruins fan. But nonetheless, who knows what's going to come from that. Well, that being said, we made it through 11 picks. The Arizona Coyotes, the pick is in here at number 12. Axel Sandin-Pellikka would be my pick for this one. We'll see if it is or not. But nonetheless, here we go. Arizona's pick is in. They will be headed to the podium shortly, I believe.
I'd say they're getting
Nonetheless, it's a very, very interesting sort of realm here, what they're looking at. We'll see whether or not Arizona makes any big moves. It does appear that they are going to be picking shortly as they make their way up in their very, very colorful suits, which are definitely a statement. But they're on the clock. Their pick is in. We'll see who they're going to pick. Sandin-Pellikka, I think, is one that we can look at, as well as Zach Benson, who's yet to be picked. I had Benson going at number 7, yet to be picked. We're at pick 12. We'll see if there's something else there. But I think between Benson, Sandin-Pellikka, I think we're pretty well covered. There could be an off-the-board pick. We'll see what else happens here. But nonetheless, here we go. With Arizona, they already picked Simashev at number 6. We'll see if they want to pick another guy who's way off the board. They seem to surprise me every time that they make a pick. And they seem to just keep getting worse. So we'll see. The one nice thing about the Arizona Coyotes is that they are well dressed. You gotta credit where credit's due. They do dress very flamboyantly. So hats off to them. The suits do look good, I do have to say. But we'll see sort of what happens here, what goes next, who's going to make the pick, and who that pick is going to be. I think, as I said, sort of Benson, Sandin-Pellikka are the two guys who I'd expect to go here. But we'll see, right? So nonetheless, they are taking the stage. We'll see who it's going to be here. But if you are new here, as they begin to thank people, if you haven't already, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't, drop a comment down below who your favorite team is and what moves you'd make if you were the GM of that team. Nonetheless, here we go. Okay, Arizona is about to make their pick. I have a feeling that this pick is going to be an off-the-board pick that is going to shock me.
The Arizona Coyotes are proud to select from Yaroslav Daniel Boot.
They went Daniel Boot. Oh my golly me. Well, I think I'm 2 for 2 in predicting that they're going to go off the board. Daniel Boot is the pick for the Arizona Coyotes. They are officially thrilling. I think they watched my video and said, you know what, we're just going to throw this list away. I had Daniel Boot going 24. Arizona is picked 12, so 24 minus 12 is 12 picks off. 17, which I had Simashev going, is 6, so that's 11 picks off. So far, I am 33 picks off with the Arizona Coyotes after 2 picks. So that is interesting. I do respect the Arizona Coyotes' ability to surprise people, but nonetheless, Daniel Boot is the pick for the Arizona Coyotes. Very, very interesting move. Doesn't make a ton of sense to me. Why they'd go with him over, a guy like Sandin-Pellikka or a guy like Zach Benson. But nonetheless, Daniel Boot for the Arizona Coyotes. I'm trying to justify this as best I can. I just can't. I'll be honest with you. I can't justify that move. It's just not a good pick. They picked 2 Russians. So if that's their sort of theories that we're just going to pick Russians in this draft, I don't know. I got to be honest. I just don't understand the move. I don't understand why they didn't go Mishkov. It just doesn't make sense to me. Nonetheless, Buffalo is going to be able to be on the clock here. 13th pick, and I think this is where trades begin to happen in the next sort of 5-ish picks. I think one team will make a trade. That's my prediction. If there's one prediction I have tonight that gets right, aside from the Bedard pick, I'm 1 for 1 in Bedard picks. That counts for anything. But nonetheless, I think there'll be a trade within the next 5 picks. Buffalo is the team that I'm very curious to see because they are a team that's sort of on the edge. And if a team was looking at sending Pellica, or Zach Benson, for example, that 13th pick, I think, becomes that much more valuable. I would not be surprised to see a team jump there. And I think that's probably where we're looking right now as to, whether or not there's a move in terms of trades. And if there is, there will be a live trade review coming right here, right in the studio. So we'll see whether or not something happens there. But nonetheless, so after 12 picks, 0 trades still. I had originally predicted, I believe, 7 trades. So we'll see if in the next 20 picks, there's going to be 7 trades. Crazier stuff's happened. I mean, we've been here for about 2 years in. We got seen some crazy stuff in this league and double IHF too. But if you are new here, please do subscribe, hit like if you haven't, and let me know down in the chat here who your favorite team is and what moves you'd make as their GM. But with that being said, still some interesting times to be had. If I'm looking strictly at trades now, let's sort of talk what potential trades we could see. I'm looking down this list. I'm looking for contenders that could have the ability to make a big move. My one that I'm looking at right now is that 13th pick, Buffalo Sabres, been on the brink of the playoffs for a while. Will they make the move to get themselves into the playoffs by using that 13th pick? Definitely an interesting question. Calgary Flames at 16. They're a team that just missed the playoffs this year. Might be a team that we could see making a big move. They definitely did not win the Tyler Toffoli trade, which is an odd move for them. So maybe they are going rebuild. Really hard to say. As we look across here, Detroit, I don't see this pick moving. I think they're drafting. Winnipeg pick, that's one I would be curious to see because they have a few options and they're sort of on the brink here. When we look at what the Jets bring, whether or not they're going to make a big trade is definitely something to take note of, as well as the Chicago pick. I don't think that they trade that pick. But their whole thing is they're trying to get Bedard as much talent around him as possible. We saw that with the Taylor Hall trade. If Chicago really wants to, they can get a right winger. They got their left winger, Taylor Hall, Connor Bedard. Right now it's Andreas Athanasiou. We'll see if it's someone else. I think there's definitely the opportunity for that. But nonetheless, we'll see sort of what ends up happening. And it's going to be interesting, right? Like there's plenty of moves that can be made to improve these teams. And that's the best part of the NHL is you're going to see all of them as I lose the water bottle. You're going to see everything from the top to the bottom to the really good trades to the really bad trades. The Buffalo pick is in. They're not going to trade it. We'll see sort of who it's going to be, if they're going to go, off the board. Once again, I'm looking at Axel Sandin Pellica and Zach Benson. I don't think they're going to go off the board that much. I mean, I've been so off with all these picks tonight. At this point, it really could be anyone's game. I got the majority of them right. Even like the top 10, I think that counts for something. But at the end of the day, 13 is going to be an interesting pick. We'll see whether or not Sabres are going to follow suit here. My 13th pick was Samuel Honzak. We'll see if that's the pick for the Buffalo Sabres. As they take the podium here, we'll see what the move is. Okay, Zach Benson is the pick. We finally got one right again, which is great news. So Zach Benson is the pick goes at number 13. Goes at number 13 to the Buffalo Sabres. This is a good move. I really do like this move for the Sabres. I think he's going to do quite well. I originally had Benson going at number 7, so 6 picks have gone by. In my opinion, this is a great pickup for the Buffalo Sabres, and I think he's going to flourish out there as a good, solid WHL player. Really good two-way guy, and I think he's going to really benefit. I think he's going to be able to help the Buffalo Sabres right away. And I think it's a great pick for the Sabres to pick up Zach Benson. But as we look ahead here with the next pick, we have number 14 with the Pittsburgh Penguins. And I think this is where it begins to get interesting. Kyle Dubas, new GM. Is he going to make a big splash? Say, you know what? We're not drafting. We're going for the cup. That's why he's there. He's not there to, draft picks, rebuild. No, he's there to win a cup for the Pittsburgh Penguins while they still have Crosby, Letang, Malkin. We'll see if they can do that. I think this next pick, although I have been wrong quite a bit tonight, I think that pick gets moved in the next pick. Whoever picks it up is going to be Axel Sandin Pellikka. We'll see if my prediction is correct. Definitely stay tuned. But if you're new here, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't. Let me know down in the chat who your favorite team is, as well as what moves you'd make if you were the GM of that team. But with that being said, it's definitely going to be interesting to see, whether or not Pittsburgh decides to make a big splash. Kyle Dubas, he wants to make a good first impression. See if that first impression is a lasting one. But at the end of the day, it's going to be interesting. The Sabres just picked Zach Benson, which follows suit, right? It's sort of an expected pick. He's fallen quite low in the draft. You got to steal him. Well, you can. We'll see if that leads to a trade at some point for the Sabres. I think it's a good trade for them. They're a good pickup for them, and eventually it'll lead to a good trade for them as they look for some more quality guys as they make their deep playoff run. Nonetheless, the Pittsburgh Penguins are on the clock, and when you think back to the Pittsburgh Penguins and the drafts in Nashville, they just got one of the loudest boos we've seen. I think that might have been a louder boo than the commissioner. Obviously, Pittsburgh did not win the Stanley Cup over the Nashville Predators, so that's why they're getting that sort of reception. But nonetheless, the Pittsburgh Penguins are on the clock. Pick 14. We'll see if Kyle Dubas makes some crazy move. I don't know if he would, but at the same time, if there was going to be a team that makes a move, there's two teams I'm looking at. They have back-to-back picks, 14, 15, right? Actually, 14, 15, 16. 14 for one reason only. Kyle Dubas wants to make a lasting impression. He wants to show to his team that he's in this to win it. 15 makes sense because they've already shown interest in trying to trade up. I don't know if they do that now. Obviously, they've had some trouble. Maybe they trade it for, one of those high-end players with potential, sort of one of those younger guys. We'll see if that pick moves. Number 16 with the Calgary Flames. Interesting pick here. I think there's a potential move to be traded. We'll see what goes on there, whether or not, the Flames are a team that have sort of wavered in what they want to do. You have moments of them saying, yeah, we want to be contenders. Then you have moments where no, we're not contenders. Contenders, not contenders. Contenders, not contenders. We'll see where they are tonight. If they're not contenders, I assume they pick. If they are contenders, who knows? And obviously normally there's not that many trades in the first sort of 15 picks because the majority of those teams are rebuilding teams until you get to 15, and then all of a sudden, you can even see it here. Then the first 15 picks, no picks are traded, right? You have, aside from the Arizona-Ottawa pick, the Ottawa pick was to get Jacob Chychrun, which is, of course, when you're looking at that deal, pretty good deal, pretty good player to get in exchange for a first-round pick, which is why they're going to do that. 14, 15, nothing. 16, nothing. 17 is where you see your first trade. Detroit, the New York Islanders Detroit trade. 19, you have Tampa Bay's original pick traded to Chicago. Now it was in the Hagel deal. LA, Philly was sort of a Korpisalo trade, the Provorov deal, which sort of, you can see, sort of trades off. We'll see. And Dubas is picking here. So we'll see. So Dubas is making the pick. Axel Sandin Pellikka, I believe, is the move. I'm struggling to see anyone else here off this list that I could see. Maybe a guy like Samuel Honzak, maybe a guy like Colby Barlow. Who knows? But we will see. Obviously, Dubas coming from the Leafs, struggled. Finally got past their first-round woes. Wasn't enough to keep him in town. I think this is one of the best pickups Pittsburgh's ever done. But nonetheless, obviously Toronto's had struggles. I think Dubas is going to help Pittsburgh tremendously. We'll see. Here we go.
NHL Entry Draft. The Pittsburgh Penguins are proud to select for the Moose Jaw Warriors, Braden Yeager.
Ooh, Braden Yeager as the pick for the Pittsburgh Penguins, which is a good pick. I do have to say. It's not who I was expecting, but it does make some sense. Jaeger's still a very, very good player. So we'll see, whether or not there's going to be another move for the Penguins, whether that prospect, Braden Jaeger, ends up getting traded at some point. I think there's the potential for that, especially Dubas, who's looking to be a contender this year, trying to show to his team, we are in this to win this. But at the end of the day, it's an interesting thing. And I think Jaeger's probably one of those players who really did well at the interview process, really became a likable guy. Just sort of the way he plays and sort of how he is as a teammate. We'll see whether or not that translates at all. As we look ahead here to the number 15 pick, Nashville Predators. Nashville is an interesting team for one reason, and one reason only, really, is that they're at home, right? So they're like the draft right now is in Nashville, which means anything they do is either going to be really surprised, like really, really happy. They're going to get a big reaction, or really sad. They're going to get a big reaction either way. And I think that's what they really want to do. Here is if they are going to make a trade, I think the Predators are a team that might do it just because they're in their building. Think back to last year in Montreal, where everything, you think about it, all the moves they made, Kirby Doc, Romanov, all these different moves either got really, really celebrated or you basically got booed out of your own building. I think Nashville is one of those teams that is going to get celebrated when they make a really, really big move. And I have a feeling that 15 pick is why they're going to make a big move. We'll see if they do. They've been rumored to be trying to trade into that top 5 all night using that 15 pick and Askarov. We'll see if there's a move elsewhere. Maybe they do end up trading one of these picks after the fact. Maybe not trading the pick to say, yeah, we want you. But instead you take the 15 pick, you say, okay, we want Will Smith, for example. We call up the San Jose Sharks, say, okay, we'll trade you Will Smith. Actually probably walk over. You're at the draft where everyone's there. You say, okay, we're going to trade the 4th pick for the 15th pick and Askarov. You want in? They say no. Okay, we'll give you something else. I think there's going to be I think if there is a trade, the Nashville Predators are the ones that do that. So the Nashville Predators are on the clock. We'll see if there is a trade here to be announced. There's a lot of Preds fans in attendance. They just had a loud, loud cheer. We'll see if there's going to be something there. But nonetheless, if you are new here, please do hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and let me know down in the comments below who your favorite team is and what moves you'd make if you were the GM of that team. So with that being said, a few moves still to be made, or a few players that still have to be picked. Axel Sandin-Pellikka, I see as a Predator too, if they choose to make the pick. Top of that, Tom Weaver already got picked, rather. But my original slot pick for 15 was Colby Barlow. So we'll see if that is the move. Obviously, there's been some moves that have counteracted the moves that I've made. Simashev was one of them where he was completely off the board. So we'll see sort of who comes up next. I think there's still a few options. Samuel Honzak is one that I'd be watching here. I think he's a player that really fit in Nashville. We'll see if he's the one. Predators fans are very, very excited for this pick. We'll see if they're going to be excited at the end of this pick. Or maybe they'll trade. No, pick is in. So I don't think they're going to trade the pick off. But David, so David Poile retiring. Yeah, great GM. But nonetheless, great pickup. And we'll see where they go here. And I think really it could be anywhere. And I look forward to seeing, where they pick, unless they're trading. Looks like they're waiting. Maybe there's a trade. I would. You don't know how much I just love a trade. If they could make a trade, that'd be so sweet. We'd have a full trade review if they do, and they are headed up to the podium, which means they're not trading. We'll see, what actually happens here, whether it's going to be someone else. Axel Sandin-Pellikka, I do see in here. Samuel Honzak as well, I do like as the pick, as well as Colby Barlow, I think also makes a ton of sense for this pick. So we'll see sort of where they go here as they begin their descent upon the stage. We'll see who they pick. They are making their way up now. With that being said, If you are new here, be sure to drop a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and let me know down in the comments who your favorite team is and what moves you'd make if you were the GM.
All right, we'll get back down to Elliot in just a matter of
Nashville fans are fired up. With that being said, very, very interesting. We will see what they do here. They are fired up. They are happy to be there. So we'll see here. I think there's still plenty of moves that can be made. We'll see who it ends up being. But Predators fans are very, very riled up. I hope they get what they're hoping for, because it's going to be a long walk back to that little table if they don't. So nonetheless, here we go.
Here we go, Smashville. From the University of Connecticut, Matthew Wood.
Matthew Wood is the pick. Okay, so I had him at 14, so one pick off yet again. So Matthew Wood at pick 15. It's a very, very good pick. And to be honest, at that slot range, it is a really solid pick. And I think, to be honest, when we look at what Nashville's getting, it's a good selection. So we'll sort of see whether or not, Matt Wood is going to stay in Nashville right away, whether he goes back to the NCAA. But we'll see overall, what actually happens with Matthew Wood. But at the end of the day, I don't think too much is going to come from him. It's a good pick. I think he'll be sort of top 6 forward-ish. But when we look at sort of down low with Calgary coming up, it's going to be very curious to see what Calgary is this time. They've walked the line. They've been a contender. Then they've said, no, we're not contending. Then they've been a contender. Then they say, no, we're not contending. Then they've been a contender. They've been back and forth. And we'll see here at this draft what their final verdict is, whether they are a contender, whether they're not. And we'll sort of see here, just in terms of what trades are coming. Kraken will be interesting too. I haven't really considered them, but their team, they made the playoffs this year. They beat Colorado. We'll see if they want to make a big move. I think that they have the ability to do it. So we'll sort of see what goes on there. The Rangers 23 pick also wanted to be watching to be traded, as well as the Toronto 28 pick. You have Trelevin coming in. Whether or not he makes a big move here. We sort of talked about Dubas a little bit earlier, wanting to make a lasting first impression. That pick, number 28, would be one to do so. So we'll see, nonetheless, what sort of happens here. But anyway, good pick for the Nashville Predators. Matthew Wood, solid player. But nonetheless, Calgary Flames are going to be on the clock here in a second. We're still waiting on Axel Sandin-Pellikka to be drafted. I think Detroit would be the team that would fit best. I don't know if Calgary would pick him, just in terms of his size, a little bit smaller of a defenseman. But nonetheless, Calgary Flames on the clock now. We'll see what they want to do. I do think that there is the opportunity for them to make a big move. As we sort of just take a look here at what we've had so far tonight. Definitely some interesting moves. We look at number 1 overall, Connor Bedard. No surprise there. That was expected. Leo Carlson at 2. I had expected it to be Fantilli. That's okay. Fantilli came in third. Nothing too surprising there. Will Smith 4, acceptable. A little bit off the board here with David Reinbacher. You could make the argument for the Habs, whatever. That's okay. Number 6, Dmitry Simashev, completely off the board pick for the Coyotes. We'll get to that in a little bit later. They've done a few of those tonight. Number 7 with Matevy Mishkov. That is probably one of the biggest steals we've seen from this draft. Number 7 to the Philadelphia Flyers. The Flyers win big in this draft. Number 8, Ryan Leonard, Washington Capitals. Sort of expect nothing too crazy there. Nate Danielson, number 9. Decent pick, nothing crazy. Number 10, Dalibor Dvorsky. We'll see what he becomes in St. Louis. Definitely an interesting move. Number 11, Tom Willander. Sort of in that range as well. Nothing too crazy. And then we go back to yet another Arizona pick where we go off the board. We've been full of these off the board so far. Daniel Boot. I can't tell you why. I've been trying to give myself reason all night. Still nothing's popped in my head. 13, Zach Benson, great pick. Number 14, Braden Yeager, great pickup. Number 15, Matthew Wood, great pickup. overall, so far, it's been very, very solid of a draft. We'll see if that continues. With Calgary, their pick is in. We'll see who they pick. I think Sandin Pellikka is probably the best option. We'll see if they go. I think there's also Colby Barlow, who they're probably also going to look at. I think there's probably between the two is the best case. I don't really think there'll be anyone else. I'm sure they're going to take an off-the-board guy here because Calgary is one of those teams where they're looking for players to win now. I think, unless they're not, and to be honest, they've been one of those teams where they've been shaky. They've been up, they've been down. But I think Sandin Pellikka, it makes the most sense for them, just with what he can do. I think Sandin Pellikka makes the most sense at 16. But also, you never know. I don't think he falls past 17 rather. Sandin Pellikka. But we'll see. I mean, Colby Barlow is another option there for Calgary. I think he'll be pretty solid. But we'll see. But nonetheless, so we'll see here. If you are new here, please do drop a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and leave a comment down below. Your thoughts on your own team. If you're the GM, what move would you make to make your team better? Let me know down below in the comments. Nonetheless, the pick is in for the Calgary Flames. We'll see who they decide to select. They're up on the stage now. We'll see what the move is.
Ready to make his first pick as a member of the Calgary Flames management.
First of all, we'd like to thank the Nashville Predators.
They're thanking people yet again, which is always fun.
We had a great time this week.
So
Thank you very much.
we'll see who it becomes this time.
I'd like to congratulate the Vegas Golden Knights on the Stanley Cup championship. And finally, there's not a general manager sitting at the table tonight, or anybody that's been a manager in this league for the last 25 years that hasn't been positively influenced by David Poile. He did his job with class and dignity and honesty, and wish him lots of success, much success in his.
Still nothing. We're just waiting now until the pick gets announced. Here we go.
Introduce our new general manager,
Nope.
Craig Conroy.
Craig Conroy is going to announce the pick. New GM.
I want to thank all our season ticket holders back at the draft party at the TELUS Club in the Scotiabank Saddledome.
Perfect.
Hope they're having a good time.
Okay, announce the pick.
With our first pick, we're going to take from the Vancouver Giants, Samuel Hanzig.
That is way off the board, I think. Unless I messed up the pronunciation.
WHL luck here in the first round of the entry draft sign.
Wow,
Taken 16th overall by the Calgary Flames, and this is a large difference.
This is completely off the board here.
Again, he was injured at the World Juniors. That is a leg cut by a skate, but that didn't really slow him down. Second in the WHL, goals by a rookie, and all smiles as he heads ready to put on that.
Oh, Samuel Hanzak. Sorry. Yeah, no, I messed up the pronunciation.
We're interviewing a bunch of players. Samuel Hansen wasn't on the list, but we happened to run into him in the hallway. And we started.
Yeah, so Samuel Hanzak goes at number 16, which is pretty much right. I had him at going at 13. So when we look at that, it's a very, very solid pickup. No complaints there. He played. He was on the Slovakian team 2022-2023 for the World Juniors, where we saw him play pretty well overall. Not as well as obviously Slavkovsky last year, who essentially did through these IHF tournaments, won himself the first spot. But he was really solid as a defender. So it's really exciting to see him being drafted by Calgary at number 16. Now, number 17 is going to be an interesting pick for the Detroit Red Wings. So where we look for them, are they going to make a trade? Maybe. Who knows? There's the opportunity for that. But I think at the end of the day, where we're looking here with Detroit is draft picks, right? They're a team that wants to draft. They want to get some stock in. You've seen with Yzerman what he can do. And I think what he's looking at right now is Axel Sandin Pellikka. He's a very solid, smaller defense, but he's going to be able to really replenish and play some offensive style. I'll be curious to see if he goes at 17. I think it makes the most sense for him to go at 17. But nonetheless, we'll see sort of what goes on here. Samuel Hanzak is at round 1 pick 16 to the Calgary Flames. So with that being said, we're halfway through the draft. Few surprises so far. We'll see if they continue. One surprise pronunciation. But with that being said, pretty expected so far. Maybe aside from the Arizona picks, which have been just abysmal tonight. and the Mishkov selection, I think, has been really the only surprises of the night for the most part. Because for whatever reason, Arizona likes to just completely throw away the hat, saying, we're going to surprise some people tonight, and we're going to do it. So with that being said, they made it to commercial break. As we hit the 9 o'clock marker, it's been a pretty fun night so far. If you are new here, please do hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and be sure to let me know down in the comments if you are GM of if your favorite team, what team is it, and what move would you make to do so. But with that being said, we'll take a look here as we begin to head towards the end of this night here. We've made it through the halfway mark, like, whoa, we're halfway there, whoa. We're going to sort of see a lot more trades. And I think when we look at these trades, we're going to start to look for contending teams, right? So a few teams that we're looking at. Winnipeg's an interesting one because they're sort of on the cusp of contending, but they're also not. Detroit, I don't see trading pick. Chicago, I don't see trading pick. Seattle, maybe. They're one team I keep an eye on because they are sort of on that cusp. We could be a contender, but we're also want to make sure we're going to play it safe. So I don't know if they'd be the ones to trade. Minnesota, 21, interesting pick as well. Maybe, maybe not. See what goes on there. The Philly pick, I don't see them trading. They might definitely take note of that. The Ranger pick, 23, I think ends up getting traded at the end of the night. We'll see there. If not, they pick and they trade him in the future. Nashville, 24. I don't know. We've obviously sort of seen Nashville. They've had some pretty good turnout in obviously at the draft. So we'll see if they want to trade that pick. I think just to give the crowd some excitement, they might. St. Louis, 25. Who knows? We've seen them already pick already with Dalibor Dvorsky. We'll see if obviously if Sandin Pellikka falls there. Sort of talked about a Krug replacement all night. Sandin Pellikka plays a very similar style to Torrey Krug. Torrey Krug is on the outs in St. Louis. They're looking to trade him. He would be a perfect replacement, sort of give him the ice time that he could use as sort of a filler role. San Jose, I don't think will trade pick. Colorado's an interesting one because they've already picked up another one with the new hook deal yesterday, which we'll get to in just a little bit. When we look at this deal, you have two trades now. You got the 27 pick and you got the 31 pick. Colorado is a contending team. They don't really need 2 first-round picks unless they're planning something big, and I think that they might be doing so. But we'll see sort of what goes on there if they have a guy that they're looking at. But nonetheless, Colorado 27. 28, the Toronto Maple Leafs pick. That's a pick I do expect it to be traded at some point, but we'll see.
Let's get down to the floor. Craig Conroy's first pick is GM of the Flames. He's been the lead for you. First draft pick.
They just announced General Manager of the Year to the Dallas Stars GM. So that being said, we're halfway there, living on a prayer, and we're at the Toronto Maple Leafs pick, which I do expect to be traded. 29, St. Louis, who knows, right? They would have had already picked twice in that draft. Maybe they're sort of on that rebuild side. We'll see what ends up happening there. 30, Carolina Hurricanes, maybe. We'll see if they want to move it. There's not too much value at that point. We'll see sort of what they want to do. Colorado, we sort of touched on earlier. And then lastly, the Vegas Golden Knights pick. I think they'll pick that one. We'll see if they don't. But nonetheless, still very, very interesting. As we take a look here at what comes next, right? There's 16 picks left. It's we got about an hour and a half-ish left before the end of the night. So we'll sort of see, what ends up happening, whether there's going to be any trades. So far, we're at 0 trades. I'll try to write 0 there. As we hope to have a trade soon to do a full live trade review. We hope that we'll have one. That would be ideal. But nonetheless, we are approximately, I assume, 5-10 minutes away from the next pick. So we'll see sort of what happens there. Adam Fantilli is currently being interviewed by Sportsnet. But with that, we'll take a little message to the reader. First off, thank you for watching. If you're liking it, please drop a like. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell. Let me know down in the comments below your favorite team. But with that, we're almost there to the next part. We'll see what comes next with the Detroit Red Wings coming in at pick 17. We'll take a look so far at sort of how we've done. So first off, Connor Bedard off the prediction list. We have all the predictions here. Connor Bedard, 1-for-1, right? We picked Connor Bedard number 1. Number 2 was Leo Carlson. I predicted Fantilli. Fantilli came 3. Carlson, I predicted 3. So, by that being said, sort of relatively close. There's been 2 sort of real surprises. All these ones are felt relatively close, within 2 or 3 picks, except for Simashev and Daniel Boot, who have combined me for 33 picks off together, which is not good for the Arizona Coyotes. That really took me off guard. They went off the board twice. We'll see if it pays off for them in the long run. But at the end of the day, I just don't think it will. But we'll see. The Detroit Red Wings are now on the pick. We will see if there will be a trade. I don't think that there will be. I think Detroit will be a team that will pick. As the pick should be in shortly. They've had quite a bit of time to think it through. And I do expect it to be Axel Sandin-Pellikka. I had him going at number 11. At number 10. We're at pick 17 now. So we'll see, whether or not Sandin-Pellikka is the move. The pick is in for the Detroit Red Wings, and they will most likely be arriving shortly. We'll see what happens. But yeah, so Detroit Red Wings pick is in at number 17. I assume it's going to be Sandin-Pellikka, but I've been saying that all night, so who knows. Other options, Colby Barlow still yet to be picked. Oliver Moore, Gabriel Perreault, Edward Saleh. We'll see sort of who is the next to move. It's definitely going to be interesting to see who is next for this pick. So I assume it's going to be Axel Sandin-Pellikka. We will see very shortly here with the Red Wings pick 17, who should be taking the stage shortly, which will be exciting for them. Obviously, whenever Steve Yzerman picks, he's the one guy who I trust to take off the board picks who normally work out. So we'll see sort of what goes on with him. He's already sort of taken an off the board pick with Nate Danielson. So we'll see if he wants to continue that here. They've all stood up now, so we'll see what the plan is here. Steve Yzerman is now talking to himself, so we'll see whether or not he is going to be. Oh, and they're on the move. They're about to take the stage. We'll see which pick this one is, whether or not it's going to be a big pick. I think Axel Sandin-Pellikka is perfectly good for the Red Wings rather here, so we'll see what they want to do. But nonetheless, if you are new here, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and let me know down below who your favorite team is. With that being said, round 1, pick 17 is in for the Detroit Red Wings, and they've already picked once, Nate Danielson. So we'll see sort of what their plan is here, whether or not what their plan is here. So they're up. They're about to make their selection. Let's see who it is. Steven Yzerman is going to make his pick.
Before making our selection, I'd like to thank all the Red Wing fans back in Detroit at Little Caesars Arena who are watching the draft live. We really appreciate your support.
Here we go.
With the 17th pick, the Red Wings select from Skellefteå, Sweden of the SHL, Axel Sandin-Pellikka.
Yep, so Sandin-Pellikka finally goes. Pick 17. So that is an absolute steal for Steve Yzerman there. So Sandin-Pellikka is the move. So Sandin-Pellikka does go at number 17. Great pickup for the for the Red Wings rather. But we sort of saw this here, right? We saw Nate Danielson go earlier, who was the other sort of Swedish defenseman. Tom Willender was the Swedish defenseman. And then I'd expected that it was going to go back-to-back with Axel Sandin-Pellikka, and then Tom Willender was going to be sort of the reverse. But nonetheless, Tom Willender went at 11. Axel Sandin-Pellikka goes at 17. And we'll see sort of what happens next with the Winnipeg Jets, who we've also seen sort of who's on the cusp. They don't know whether to be a rebuilding team, whether to trade all their assets away, which is sort of where they're looking. It seems to be where they're looking right now. We'll see whether there's a big move here. But nonetheless, we hope that there's a trade soon. There hasn't been yet. We've been 17 picks in. We originally predicted 7 trades so there's 15 picks left. We'll see if there's about half the trades. We'll see. Probably a little bit under is what it's looking like right now. But nonetheless, we'll see sort of what moves here. Normally towards the end of the draft, there's a lot more trades. We'll have a full trade review right here. So make sure to stick around. We'll see sort of what happens. But nonetheless, good pickup for the Detroit Red Wings. And we will see whether or not they decide to have some fun with this next pick with the Winnipeg Jets, what their sort of goal is.
Much more to talk about, but we do want to get into the pile of West
But with that being said, if you're new here, be sure to drop a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and let me know down in the comments your favorite team. But as we sort of wait around here for the next pick, we're going to talk about the Winnipeg Jets and their mess of a situation. We've already seen Wheeler, who's on the outs, Scheifele, who's on the outs. Everyone seems to be on the outs in Winnipeg, and whether or not they want to, make a big change, say, okay, we are committed to you guys. We want to win a cup just as much as you guys do. That might be where this draft starts for them. We'll see sort of what ends up happening, whether or not they have some crazy sort of move. We'll see what happens. But nonetheless, Winnipeg 18 is coming up on the clock. Now we'll see if they want to make a trade. But nonetheless, Winnipeg is now on the clock with pick 18. We'll see if they want to go a little crazy. But I don't think that they will. I think they're going to be relatively calm in terms of what they'll bring. But we'll see. Obviously, they have a few options. I think right about now we're sort of on the edge of what are we going to do for picks. And so pick 18, for example, for what I had was Oliver Moore. We still haven't seen Colby Barlow go. He's one to keep an eye on, as well as Oliver Moore, I think still fits. Gabriel Perreault is another one who I think could fit in quite nicely in Winnipeg, but we'll see what they want to do. Quinton Musty, who was the first overall pick to the Sudbury Wolves in the OHL selection, the priority selection draft. He's another one who I might keep an eye on here for that pick. We'll see whether they want to go there. Obviously, sort of played in the cold in Sudbury up north. We'll see if that sort of fits in with what they're doing. Nonetheless, Winnipeg's pick is in. No trades for them. We'll see what they want to do with this pick. But we will see. As we're hitting we'll see sort of what goes on. I think there's plenty of options for this next move. Kevin Sheffield-Dayoff, who's just about on the edge in terms of where he is with the thing. We'll see if he's going to be kicked out of the town. But so they're selecting 18th overall for the third time since 2021, which is very surprising. They've drafted 3 defensemen in the first round in the last 10 years. So surprising. But we'll see sort of where they want to go. I think, as I said, I wouldn't be surprised to see Quinton Musty be the pick here. I think he's an underrated pickup for the Winnipeg Jets, and I think he'll fit quite nicely. As I started interviewing Axel Sandin-Pellikka here, which was an excellent pickup for the Detroit Red Wings. Seems like they always win these things, always win these drafts. So good for him. But 18th overall here, we'll see what they do with the Winnipeg Jets. I think there's quite a few options for them, and we'll see sort of what they want to do. But nonetheless, as we sort of look ahead here, we'll wait for this pick as they are taking the stage. We'll hold off on talking about the next pick until after this one. But the Winnipeg Jets have taken the stage, so we'll see what the pick is. There's a few options. I think Quinton Musty's one that you should take a look at. I don't know if they take him that early because it is early for him, nonetheless. But I am curious to see sort of where he goes, whether or not they go way off the board. Obviously, the Jets are a team that has the ability to go off the board to really get the player that they want. But we'll see sort of where they end up. I think I am curious to see who they go with. I think Colby Barlow is another one who they might consider. But I think probably one of the two of them makes the most sense. Gabe Perreault as well. And Edward Saleh is another one who I might think would be a pretty solid pickup. But we'll see. As they're thanking everyone, we'll see sort of where this goes. We're almost there here, so we'll see sort of where the Winnipeg Jets go. I think there's a few options. We'll see, though. We're thanking people still.
Winnipeg Jets are proud to select from Owen Sound of the OHL, Colby Barlow.
So Colby Barlow is the pick, 18 to the Winnipeg Jets. So this is a really good pickup.
The latest pick and a member now of the Winnipeg Jets. It's not often at 18 you can get a 46-goal scorer and the youngest captain actually in franchise.
Colby Barlow. So great pickup for the Winnipeg Jets, and I think he's really going to fit in quite nicely there from Owen Sound. So once again, has sort of adapted to that cold. But I think he's going to fit in nicely, especially his play style. And I think he might bring a little bit of relief to the veterans of the Jets. They have had some serious problems around there, as we sort of talked about. Whether or not they do decide to contend this year, I don't really see it. Now, the more you look at what they're doing, why they're making these moves, it does appear that they're starting to get rid of a lot of their older sort of players. So they're starting to phase out into the younger. So I do expect them to sort of go into that rebuild right about now. But nonetheless, he's pretty solid player overall. And I look forward to seeing sort of what he does. I think he'll fit in quite nicely in Winnipeg. But we'll see sort of what happens there. He is the youngest captain in Owen Sound attack history in 2023. So we'll see sort of what goes on there. And now we'll sort of talk about the other pick here, number 19 with the Chicago Blackhawks. We'll be picking. This was in the Braden Hagel deal. So it's an interesting move, right? When we look at what they've done, Tampa at least. Who's the real winner of the deal? Who knows? I mean, Tampa got skunked by the Leafs this year in 6. So they kind of got screwed in that sense, right? When we look at the playoff format, it's a tough playoff format, right? When you look at it, because you have the team that's saying, no, well, you have to play the top team. And then assuming Boston would have won, you had to play the next best team. They would have to play the next best team. It's just sort of a messed up playoff structure, but that's another video of complaining. But nonetheless, this Hagel deal is going to lead to Chicago's 19th pick. We'll see whether or not there is a big move here. I think Chicago could be a team to consider for a big move. Obviously, right now I'm hoping for anything. We've gone through 18 picks, 0 trades so far. So I do hope that they make something relatively soon. It would be very nice just to do some sort of trade review tonight. But nonetheless, Chicago at 19. We'll be seeing if they make any sort of big moves. But nonetheless, we are here. We're celebrating tonight as the entry draft. It's definitely a fun time. But nonetheless, Chicago 19 is the next pick. I'd be curious to see who they go with. Once again, sort of similar options here with Oliver Moore, Gabriel Perreault, Quentin Musty as well. Pretty solid players. Could start to see an Andrew Cristall in there. But I don't really know who they'd go with. I think there's another one where you could go off the board and get a goaltender. My personal preference is Adam Gajan as the goaltender, but that's also very biased. Huge World Juniors fan. We've done some coverage on the World Juniors too. Gajan was probably the biggest standout in terms of that. Goaltender of the tournament, he won that, and he was really good. He basically kept Slovakia. He brought Slovakia to the quarterfinals to play Canada, got them to the overtime period, and unfortunately, Slovakia just couldn't put it in. So I think they hit a post too. So it's one of those things, 19. We'll see sort of what happens. It's quite the thing. But Chicago pick 19 here. We'll see if they end up trading the pick. I don't think that they will. I think they're going to keep sort of building a younger core around Bedard because they're looking once again as well, sort of 4-ish, 5 years. Once they're all into once they're all sort of into their prime, we'll see if they do or not. But nonetheless, Chicago pick 19. We'll see what they do. Hidden talent. Could grow a beard at age 7. That is quite the talent. I wish I could grow a beard at age 7 too. Wish I could grow a beard at age 18. But nonetheless, it's going to be an interesting pick for the Chicago Blackhawks. I'm curious to see where they go here. Because it's basically all forwards at this point, unless they want to go off the board and pick up a defenseman. But Chicago, this will be their last pick of the night unless they decide to trade up. I don't think that they will, so I think this will probably be the last time we see the Blackhawks tonight. But nonetheless, probably the best logo we've ever seen of all time. I will stand by that one. But we'll see sort of where they go, what happens. I think that they're about to make their way up. Yeah, we'll see sort of where they're going. They should be just about on their way up. They're on the clock. Their pick's in. So we'll see. They should be going up shortly. Again, this pick came from Tampa in the Brandon Hagel deal. We'll see sort of if that pick's going to cost Tampa in the long run. Obviously, they didn't do so hot this year. But still, it's one of those things, you say to your team, we believe in you. We're going to go get out and get an asset, even if we overpay, because that was quite the overpayment on that Hagel deal. But nonetheless, Chicago Blackhawks are on their way up. We'll see what the move is here. But we'll see here. The slot pick I had here at 19 was Gabriel Perreault. We'll see if it is. Oliver Moore still up there. Colby Barlow as well. Could be really any range of players here. We've sort of got through all the major names. So we'll see now if there is a way off the board pick. Chicago is sort of known for that a little bit, going off the board, especially when they don't have a obvious pick. So we'll see if they want to sort of take one off the board, but we'll see here. Nonetheless, Chicago's pick here, about to pick, and we'll see where it goes. I think if I had to pick one, we'll go Gabriel Perreault. That's my guess.
19th pick in the NHL draft, the Chicago Blackhawks are very proud to select Oliver Moore from the U.S.
Oliver Moore. Yep. Should have predicted that one, considering I picked him just before. So great pickup once again. Pretty solid slot spot. No real surprise there. But Oliver Moore to the Chicago Blackhawks at number 19. Very solid pick. He's going to play well for the Blackhawks. I don't know if he'd get into the lineup right away, but he will be sort of along that side. But nonetheless here, 19 picks in. We'll see if pick 20 brings us our first trade. We are still waiting for a trade. Really hope there's a trade tonight. That'd be relatively nice. But nonetheless, we'll sort of talk. We'll pick one random trade once again off the deck. We have a bunch of decks here. And we'll talk here about the Colorado trade with the Predators, I believe. Ryan Johansson to the Colorado Avalanche at $4 million. He has an $8 million contract at 50%. $4 million. He has one more year after this year in exchange for Alex Galchenyuk. So this deal was rather weird that they just give up Johansson like this. Obviously, it's a cap dump to try and get some younger players in, sort of able to do whatever, sort of that wiggle room. But to give up and to get back only Alex Galchenyuk, really, really odd deal. I'm not sure why they would do this in terms of trade grade. I mean, Colorado's the clear winner. They get a really solid player in Johansson for relatively free, and they get him at 50%. So we'll see. I don't really know why they do that. But nonetheless, it's an interesting deal. Colorado clear winner of this deal. You get Ryan Johansson, solid player, veteran leader. And he's going to help them on their cup run, right? Where we look at sort of on this list here, we have 2 Colorado picks. Maybe comes and goes. Maybe there'll be a trade there. I think there probably will be on one of those picks. But nonetheless, Colorado trades off for Alex Galchenyuk. So we'll see sort of what goes on there with Ryan Johansson. And they pick up yet another forward, which is really solid, which allowed them to make the next deal, which is the Alex Newhook deal, which was the RFA status of Alex Newhook, which they traded away in exchange for Gianni Fairbrother, who's basically an AHLer, not really relevant in this deal. A 2023 first-round pick, which is the 31st overall pick, which was from the Montreal Canadiens and eventually from the Florida Panthers, and the 2023 second-round pick, which is 37. So in reality, it's 2 second-round picks in exchange for Alex Newhook. Now, this deal is an interesting one. I do like the deal. I really do for both sides. I think it's a good deal. Newhook really hasn't ever found his groove in Colorado, so it's really good to see him move on to a team where he has that sort of creative freedom in Montreal, where they're in that sort of rebuild stage, and they'll have opportunities to do so, building around David Reinbacher, which, once again, not quite the pick I would have made, but nonetheless, a pick they made. So Newhook, once again, But with that being said, an interesting move here was that the Colorado Avalanche used the other part of that pick to trade for Ross Colton. And that was, I believe, earlier today. So that was an interesting move. So RFA, the arbitration rights to Ross Colton in exchange for the pick from the Newhook deal. So with that being said, it was an interesting deal that really just made a lot of sense for the Montreal Canadiens. For the Colorado Avalanche. You basically trade Newhook for Ross Colton, a first-round pick, and Gianni Fairbrother, who's really not really relevant. But you trade Newhook for first and Colton, and for most people in general, for a contending team, you trade Ross Colton for Newhook, like pretty decently speaking. So it's just an interesting move by the Colorado Avalanche. Great move overall. It's a good deal overall for the Avalanche to pick up a first for Newhook is, yes, he has a lot of talent, he has a lot of potential, just haven't really been tapped into in Colorado. Whereas Montreal, we'll see where he goes. Obviously, this trade might come back to bite the Colorado Avalanche. But at the end of the day, he never really found his groove there. So I think it makes a lot of sense for the Avs to pick up essentially two assets for one. So at the end of the day, great deal for the Colorado Avalanche. We'll see if they end up moving that pick tonight. I think when you look at the 31 pick, we'll see sort of what they want to do. I think that they have the option, if they want to move that pick to get an even bigger asset. But of course, still remains to be seen. We'll see what goes on there. But nonetheless, very, very interesting. Seattle is now on the clock, 20th pick. If I had to guess, so the slot pick there was Edward Saleh. We'll see if they go with him. Gabriel Perreault still on the board. We'll see if they decide to go with him as well. But nonetheless, we'll see here. 20th pick overall. The pick is in. They should be taking the stage shortly. But we'll sort of see where they go. Oliver Moore, great, really good skater too. But overall, good player. Good pickup by the Chicago Blackhawks. We'll see what they want to do there. So the Seattle Kraken heading up for their pick, 20th overall after knocking out the Colorado Avalanche. But we'll see. Obviously, Kraken have not a lot of history in terms of drafts, so we'll see where they want to go here. But you always got to sort of cheer for them. Not a big Vegas fan anymore, expansion-wise, because they've had their time. But Seattle, the underdogs coming in, they did what the expansion teams are supposed to do. All right, so Saleh is the pick. I think it's actually the one I picked at slot 20, which it is. So that makes two right predictions tonight, which is, not great, but I've had worse. So nonetheless, Edward Saleh is going to the Seattle Kraken, which is a great move, as I almost tripped. But good pickup for the Seattle Kraken, coming at number 20. So we'll see sort of what he does out there. I don't think that he'll end up becoming right away into the NHL. I think he'll sort of start AHL-wise if he makes it there. If they decide to offer him, I assume they would start AHL, build his way up. He's going to be a good player for the Seattle Kraken, I have no doubt, especially with not too much of a farm system in Seattle. We'll sort of see what they want to do. We'll see sort of what goes on there. Next pick we have coming up is the Minnesota Wild. This is, once again, we come back to this dilemma. Do you trade the pick, or do you try and make the pick something worth? This point in the draft, we start to see these first-round picks get flipped for 2 second-round picks, especially when there's someone that you don't really see that you want. In this case, Gabriel Perreault is the one player I'd keep an eye on. Andrew Crystal, Oliver Bunk. Daniel Boot already went. That's sort of the off-the-board pick we saw earlier. But other than that, a lot of picks have gone pretty accurate tonight. A lot of the predictions, at least, went pretty accurately tonight. So we'll see sort of what goes on, if there's any other moves. I think trades are going to start coming in at some point here, especially towards these back-end picks. The Leafs pick, I especially think, will be one. I would be surprised to see that Vegas pick at the end be flipped in exchange for, 2 seconds or, 2 seconds and a seventh or something. But normally that's how it sort of works, is that they'll trade off. Maybe it's a late second, an early second with like a third round pick. But we'll see sort of what goes on. But Edward Satellite to the Seattle Kraken at number 9, or not number 20 rather. So number 21 here is going to be the Minnesota Wild, and I think them really could be any sort of pick. I'm curious to see where they want to go with this. But it will be interesting to see who they decide to go with. Because it really could be anyone now. Like, we're at that point in the draft now where off-the-board picks are commonplace. And there's no real script to anything. So we'll see sort of what is going on with it. Minnesota here, pick 21. If you are new here, be sure to drop a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and let me know who your favorite team is in the comments and what you do to make their team better, what moves you'd make in the chat below. So, yeah, if you are new here, do that. If you're not, then it's a good thing you already subscribed, right? But nonetheless, Minnesota coming in at two minutes here on the clock. Could really go with anyone here. There's a lot of different options. We'll see sort of where they want to go. The pick is in for the Minnesota Wild. We'll see who they want to go with.
I think they will a little bit, but Ron's a very patient guy, Ron Francis, and they'll build this thing methodically.
Yeah, there's been very few trades tonight, which is surprising. So normally there's a few trades here and there that teams will make. But it's been a rather quiet draft for the most part. So we'll see sort of what goes on. But the Wild are just about ready to make their pick here. So we'll see who that is. The slot pick for it was we had Quentin Musty. So once again, the selection pick from this priority selection pick, first overall to the OHL draft back in the 05 draft. He was well regarded as a great player. So we'll see if he can continue that if he gets picked here in Minnesota. The other pick is Gabriel Perreault. So we'll see if he gets picked here. I had him originally slotted at 19. He's the highest ranked player I have on my list right now. So we'll see if sort of whether or not he'll be picked early. But nonetheless, it's going to be an interesting pick here for the Minnesota Wild. We'll see where they want to go. But nonetheless, we'll see here. They are walking up. So we'll see if they're going to take an off-the-board pick. The majority of these players from here on out are all forwards. So we'll see whether or not they're going to go off the board to get a defenseman. Some teams sort of do that. We'll look here, mainly the teams that will need help on the D side will go off the board early, grab their defenseman, especially teams that don't have a lot of picks. Like the Leafs, for example, might go with a defenseman because they don't have a lot of picks in return, or the Tampa pick, which they just acquired. They have no picks. They got the second round pick. They might go with a defenseman that's way off the board just because they don't want to trade. Or normally what they'll do is trade down, but we'll see sort of what happens here. The Wild are now all up there. We'll see who they decide to pick. But nonetheless, here we go. Minnesota Wild are picking. We'll see who they with their thanking people first. So we'll see who it is that they will select.
Your friendship, like Kyle said, being a mentor to so many young general managers out there, we appreciate everything you've done for us in the game. Also, a great thank you to the city of Nashville.
So we'll see Minnesota here, giving their thanks.
For keeping this entire group well hydrated and entertained. Minnesota Wild.
Here we go. See what it is.
Proudly select from the University of Wisconsin, Charlie Stramel.
Okay, so Charlie Stramel is the pick here. Charlie Stramel was originally the 32nd pick on my list. So he goes 11 picks early.
Is from Rosemount, Minnesota. So they pick the local kid who just played at Wisconsin. And what do they get in a player known as Big Rig? That's exactly what they're getting. And
Charlie Stramel is the pick here. So we'll see sort of what they're going to get out of him. It's going to be it's an interesting pick. Obviously, we're sort of at the edge of the draft now. So this is where we get to the point where you start to go to get the players you want. It's not necessarily about you're forced to pick. So like these first few picks, you're sort of forced in that sense, right? You're forced to take Bedard. You're forced to take either Carlson, Fantilli, or Mishkov. You're forced to take Smith. You're forced to take all these different players within a certain range. This is where you begin to take sort of a range, unless you're the Arizona Coyotes, and then you say, I don't really care, and let's just pick whoever we want. But nonetheless, so interesting move here. We'll see sort of what they're going to do. I think it's going to be definitely an interesting pick for the Wild. I think just sort of the locality. He played in Wisconsin, sort of nice and close to Minnesota. So we'll see sort of whether or not they want to. Like obviously he's had that experience around there, surrounding that area. So we'll see if he continues to progress in there in that sort of region. But with that being said, we'll see sort of what they want to do here. We'll take a look at the next pick here. This is the Philly pick coming at 22, originally Kings. This was the Kings trade for Corsallo. So we'll see sort of whether or not there's obviously Columbus and the Columbus for Rob deal. So we'll see sort of what Philly gets out of this. I assume they're going to pick. I don't see them trading this pick unless they don't have someone and then they'll trade down. But I think there are definitely plenty of options here. When we look at the list here, we have at 22, we do have Andrew Cristall as the slot pick. Quentin Musty and Gabriel Perreault still have yet to go. So we'll see if that is the if that's the end goal. We'll see sort of who goes there. But nonetheless, if you are new here, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe if you have not already, and let me know down in the comments who your favorite team is and what you do to fix them, basically. So that being said, good draft so far. The surprises, sort of recapping the surprises here. Arizona, as always, they just don't seem to know how to draft. We have a Daniel Booth pick, and we have Dmitry Simashev. That's really sort of been, there's been two surprises. One is the Arizona Coyotes both picked. The other one was Dmitry Mishkov fell to number 7 to the Philadelphia Flyers. My opinion, that's the best pick of the draft. I don't believe that they pick elsewhere here, or aside from this next pick. But after this pick, like they basically have won the draft. They got probably the second best player in the draft. And they, because obviously the reason why he's fallen so low, one, you could argue character issues, but the other one is because he's not coming to North America for the first few years. But really, it doesn't matter to the Philadelphia Flyers because they're already sort of like they're saying, okay, we're done. We're in no real position to contend in the next few years. So we want the best player. And in my personal opinion, Mishkov is the second best player in this draft, despite obviously not being there. I think that was probably the biggest concern for teams and sort of the way these teams are positioned. Obviously, Anaheim, in my opinion at least, are a team that has the ability to contend if they want to. So with that being said, the Ducks are obviously not going to take a player that they can't get for the next few years. And then Columbus was one where I wasn't really sure. I was sort of on that cusp. San Jose, I was surprised not to see him. Montreal, very surprised. Arizona, even more surprised. In fact, they started with the Russian team name, and I was like, okay, it must be Mishkov. It was not Mishkov. In fact, it was Dmitry Simashev, who I originally had at 17. So really off the board pick there. Daniel Booth I had at 24. So one of these sort of days where the Arizona Coyotes like to go against the grain. We'll see if that continues or not. But nonetheless, here we'll see Philadelphia's pick is in number 22. We'll see sort of what goes on here if they decide to make a big move. But with that being said, we'll talk here. Actually, we'll wait till after that Philly makes their pick. Then we'll talk about the PLD deal, Pierre-Luc Dubois, which is quite the move. I was rather surprised by this move. It was an interesting move, but I think it was a desperate Winnipeg move just to get some Winnipeg move to get some return. Obviously, when we look back, the Line A deal for PLD, not Line A for yet, but nonetheless, interesting times here. We'll see what happens. But here we go. The pick is now about to be announced. Philly has taken the stage. The slot pick here was Andrew Cristall, Gabe Perreault, Quentin Musty, and Andrew Cristall. Those are the 3 players I'm looking at for this pick. If I had to guess, Gabe Perreault is the pick, but we'll see sort of what goes on here, who it's going to be, as Daniel Briere is about to announce the pick.
With the 22nd selection, Flyers are proud to select from the London Knights of the OHL, Oliver Bunk.
Oliver Bunk is the pick. So Oliver Bunk was originally 23rd on the list. So good slot pick there. Really solid player overall.
That name sounds familiar. It should. Radek Bonk, his father, taken 13th overall back in 19.
So good player, and really not going to be that, not going to go that far off. Good solid pickup for the Flyers here. Yeah. So no real problems in terms of the Flyers. To be honest, at this point in the draft, the Flyers don't matter. They don't care about it. They've already won the draft with their pick of Mishkov. So with that being said, they can do anything that they want. Mishkov was the key for this team. They got Mishkov. They're good for the rest of the draft. They're going to win this draft no matter what. They got Mishkov, and aside from the Blackhawks, you got Bedard. In my opinion, Flyers are the winners in terms of what they've had in this draft. Carlson, Fantilli, both good picks too. But at the end of the day, in my opinion, Mishkov is the biggest steal of this draft for the Flyers. And I really do think that they're going to really enjoy that, especially not necessarily in the first 2 or 3 years. Obviously, he's out in Russia for that time. But when he finally comes to North America, he's going to help this team tremendously. But it's a great pick. Once again, Oliver Bunk. You're not going to go wrong with it. But now we look ahead, right? We look ahead to the right side. We're finally through the first 2 categories, 22 picks down with 10 to go. We originally predicted 7 trades. So far, we're at a big whopping 0. So we assume that there'll be a few trades coming up. I really do hope so. We got the trade review ready on the other half of this board. But nonetheless here, New York Rangers coming in at the 23rd pick. So we'll see if they want to trade. I think there'll be a team that might trade, especially if they don't see someone they want. They got Gabe Perreault, who's got a little bit more sort of off-slot value. I had him going a little bit earlier. Quentin Musty, Andrew Cristall is another one who I'm looking at. But we'll see sort of who goes here. I think there's definitely a few options about who's going to go. But nonetheless, we'll see sort of what goes on here as we start to reach the 9:45 mark. We got roughly around a half hour to go. We'll see sort of what goes on here in this last half hour-ish, probably a little bit more. But nonetheless, Oliver Bonk out of London Knights, good, pretty good pickup, physical guy. But we'll see sort of what goes on here. So now we look at the final half of the board, and this is where it starts to get interesting because we start to see a lot more trades. A lot of trades we'll see here tonight will be first-round pick in exchange for 2 seconds. New York will be one of those teams I think will be sort of like that. I wouldn't be surprised, especially if they don't see someone they like. Otherwise, I don't see them being too like some whopping deal like last year we saw with Kirby Dach. I don't see that happening again this year. We're just too far into this draft now for that kind of move. But the Rangers are a team that like to sort of keep it simple. I don't see them making too fancy of a move, but we'll definitely see. But Nashville is coming up after that, 24. St. Louis, 25. San Jose, 26. Colorado, 27. Toronto at 28 from the Boston-Washington Toronto pick. St. Louis coming in at 29. 30 is going to be Carolina. 31 is going to be Colorado. And finally, 32 is the Vegas Golden Knights. So we'll see here. The Rangers pick is in. So we'll see sort of who they decide to pick. Sort of, once again, going through. The original slot spot was Oliver Bunk, who just got picked by the Philadelphia Flyers. So we'll see here. I got Gabe Perreault probably is going to be the selection here. It just makes a lot of sense for that to happen, as well as Quentin Musty, Andrew Cristall. We'll see who that's going to be. It's definitely interesting. We'll see sort of what goes on. But nonetheless, we'll definitely see who. It's going to be an interesting pick here. They got a lot of different options to pick from, but they do have 10 picks left in this draft. So definitely stay tuned. There will be trades with the trade review coming, so hopefully there'll be some sort of trade. Been waiting all night for one. But with that being said, we are at pick 23 in this draft. So we'll see sort of what goes on there. But yeah, so they should be picking shortly. I assume that they're going to start to head up soon. But we'll see. Still plenty of time left in this draft for a big move. You never know. Colorado is one team to watch. They got 2 picks. We'll see if they want to do something special. We'll see. So definitely stay tuned. These Rangers are really taking their time here.
We got to trademark that six salad. He has a six salad. I love that. And listen, we've seen this before, and you heard Chuck talk about the importance of drafting young men who.
Oh, they got me there. They said there was a trademark. I thought I heard trade. I got excited. But no, the Rangers pick is in. They will be announcing it shortly. We'll see who it is. If I had to guess, probably Perot, if not Crystal. Maybe Dragicevic, but we'll see. Actually, probably Dragicevic because they do like their Russians. No, he's Russian.
The New York Rangers are proud to select from the U.S. under-18 team Gabriel Perot.
Okay, so Gabe Perot is the pick. So good pick. I do think that's going to be a good pick for them. He is a pretty solid player.
Joining his father now as an NHLer. His brother Jacob was also drafted by Anaheim.
So really solid pick here from the New York Rangers. They got their guy at the end of the day. Really solid option, and I think when we look at a guy like Gabriel Perot, what he brings is just a solid, well-rounded game, and he's going to be an offensive threat, right? He's proven that with the U.S. National Development Team. So he's going to be a solid option for the New York Rangers. See sort of how he flourishes alongside some really solid players in New York. I don't think he's going to crack the lineup quite yet in terms of the NHL, but in a little bit of time, he'll probably find his way. We'll see sort of what goes on there. But as we look ahead here to the next pick with the 24th overall pick to Nashville, we'll sort of see something interesting. Obviously, it's a hometown draft for the Nashville Predators. Are they going to make a trade to really give the crowd something to cheer about? We saw with the pick already. They had quite the reaction. So we'll see if that continues. I will be curious to know. I think that there's definitely the option for that to happen. But nonetheless, Nashville is going to be on the clock shortly. So we'll see if there's any big deals there. As we reach the 45-minute or 9:45 mark of tonight, it's definitely it's been a good night so far. Definitely exciting in terms of the draft class. There have been some solid players so far. Obviously, Connor Bedard. This has been a loaded draft class. Connor Bedard, number 1, without a doubt, makes sense. Mishkov at number 7 was sort of surprising, and the Arizona picks and Mishkov. Really the two surprises of tonight. Nothing over the top so far, but definitely interesting nonetheless. But what we will do now is we will talk about another trade. And this one was between the LA Kings and the Winnipeg Jets. So the LA Kings did receive the RFA rights to Pierre-Luc Dubois with an 8.5 by $8 million. This was interesting because obviously LA is trying to contend. Winnipeg sort of on the cusp. They're not really sure what they're doing yet. But in exchange for PLD, they got Gabriel Flaherty, who's a really solid prospect coming up, and Alex Iafallo, $4 million 1 year, and our Cooper Valley. So in a 2024 second round pick. So really just a loaded class or a loaded trade for Pierre-Luc Dubois. And don't get me wrong, he's a good player. Signed an 8.5 by $8 million deal, which is once again another overpayment. But nonetheless, he's a very, very solid player. And I think overall, in terms of what the Kings are looking for, it's a good pickup. And so with that being said, we are going to take a quick break. We'll be back in about 35 seconds. Take care. Okay, so once again, it's an interesting deal for that LA Kings Winnipeg Jets trade, because obviously the Jets are now rebuilding, and it's one of those things where it makes a lot of sense in the grand scheme of things, that they start to phase out their players. Dubois, I think, is the first piece to fall. Scheifele, maybe. Wheeler, maybe. Um, Connor is an interesting asset. Obviously, he's a younger sort of guy, but he could be another one to move. And obviously, they got a lot of assets. If they want to go full rebuild, I think they have the opportunity to do so. I don't think it'll be at this draft. I think it'll be in a little bit. But the Nashville Predators are picking now. So we'll see sort of what they end up wanting to do. With that being said, here, the slot pick here for the Nashville Predators at pick 24 is Daniel Boot, who already went back in pick 12 with the Arizona Coyotes. So my prediction for this pick is either Quentin Musty, Andrew Cristall, or Lucas Dragicevic. So there's plenty of picks here still to be made. Obviously, Gabe Perreault to the New York Rangers at pick 23. Very, very interesting. We're hoping for a trade at some point tonight, so we can do a live trade review. If you are new here, be sure to drop the like, hit subscribe if you haven't already, and let me know down in the comments who your favorite team is and what moves would you make to make them better. But with that being said, Nashville Predators here, pick 24, 0 trades so far tonight. We'll see who it's going to be. The Nashville Predators are about to pick. As I said, if I had to pick one player, Quentin Musty is my pick. And Barry Trotz takes the stage. Let's see who it's going to be. So here we go. So Yossi's going to come out and pick. And pick Arena. He's also going to pick. So they're bringing out the old, their old goalie here. So we'll see who it's going to be. So it'll be quite the pick, I think. I'll be curious to see who it's going to be. There could be any Ranger people now.
Nashville is proud to select Tanner Molendyk.
Okay, so Tanner Molendyk is the pick. Molendyk, I'm pretty sure is how you say it. It's an interesting move, I'll be honest. He wasn't on my list. He was one of the players that I had sort of at the back end of that list, sort of high-end second-round player. It's a solid pickup for the Nashville Predators. No doubt about that. It's a good pick. It's not going to be your star player anymore. We're sort of out of that range, but he is very, very solid all around. I sort of look forward to seeing what he's going to be able to produce. I think he's a solid pickup here.
They sat him down and said, listen, here's what you need to be. Don't worry about it. Continue with the good process.
But nonetheless, it's a good pickup for the Nashville Predators. I think they're going to quite enjoy him. He is a very solid player overall. And I think when we look at him, obviously he's a bigger dude. He's pretty good. He played for the Olympic Gretzky Cup. So I'd be curious to see sort of what he can do. I don't see him cracking the roster in Nashville right away. Sort of an AHL guy, build him up, make him a little bit bigger, stronger, faster, and I think he'll sort of grow into that role. Solid player. So we'll see sort of what he becomes, if anything, in Nashville. And I think he definitely has the ability to make it far enough. We'll see sort of what goes on here. As we look ahead to the next pick, we have the St. Louis Blues. Pick 25. See where they want to go. They took Dalibor Dvorsky earlier in the draft, so we'll see if they want to sort of continue with that. Obviously, a solid player in Dvorsky already, and we'll see if they want to take one more. They got one more pick coming up at pick 29. We'll see if that changed their sort of strategy at all. When we look at it, what sort of I have so far, pick 25 slot-wise is Lucas Dragicevic. We'll see if they pick him. There's also Andrew Cristall and Quentin Musty. Quentin Musty, I think, is the pick. Former first overall priority selection pick from the OHL. We'll see if he is the end goal. But nonetheless, interesting move here by the Nashville Predators. They did go off the board picking up Molendyk, but I think it is a good pickup for them. I think they are going to enjoy it. Obviously, defensemen at this point now are hard to come by. especially high-end defensemen. We sort of got through all those picks. So we'll see sort of what goes on next. But nonetheless, St. Louis is now on the clock. We're at pick 25 of 32, so 7 more picks. So it should be an interesting sort of process here. We still have 0 trades, which is very, very interesting. I do expect something to happen soon. I think we're at that point now where there has to be a move. But nonetheless, we'll see. Still nothing yet. But yeah, there should be a move shortly. I am looking at that Toronto pick. It doesn't make a ton of sense that they still have it. But I do sort of expect that pick to be moved, as well as 2 Colorado picks. It's really weird for a contending team to have two picks, especially in the first round, especially for a team that's like a real contender. But nonetheless, we'll see if they make any moves. It'll be interesting. So we'll sort of see where they go here. Minute 50 left. There might be a trade here for the St. Louis Blues. Obviously, they have one more pick coming in at pick 29. So maybe they get rid of this pick and then pick the player they want at 29. But nonetheless, sort of whenever you see 2 picks back to back, it's interesting because that means that there's likely going to be a move. It's just a matter of who's going to make it and really when. But we'll see. So pick 25, minute 30 left, still nothing. So there could be a trade at this point, especially if they're trying to figure out who they want, if there is someone. Otherwise, they might be making a call right now. So hopefully there's a trade. I keep having my hopes up. I really want to do a trade review for you guys live. But nonetheless, we'll see sort of what happens here. The pick is in for the St. Louis Blues, so there will not be a trade on this pick. My slot pick for pick 25 is Lukas Dragicevic. I'd also be keeping an eye out for Quentin Musty and Andrew Cristall. We'll see if those guys are the picks. But nonetheless, we'll see. If you are new here, be sure to drop a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and leave a comment down below your favorite team, as well as what you do to change your team. What you do? What moves did you make to make them better, or worse if you're trying to tank? But with that being said, we'll see here. Obviously, pick 25. We're just about to the end of it. Probably about 20-ish minutes left. We'll see if there's any more trades. Right, one last-minute trade here. But as we go here, St. Louis is now making their way to the podium. So we'll see if there's any big moves. If there's any wacky picks, I think this is where we start to see people go off the board. We saw with the Melendek pick, which basically just means that there's no more defensemen in like sort of that top end range. So if they are looking for defensemen focused, like obviously Nashville was, that's what they have to do. So we'll see what St. Louis does. Right. So Otto Stenberg, I originally picked out at 28. He goes earlier. He goes at 25. Really solid pickup. Good route, well-rounded player. So not really too surprised about that one.
I got a lot of love for this guy. Great bookends to the season when JB and I were out in Red Deer watching.
So I don't really see him. He's a solid player. I don't see him cracking the Blues lineup right away, but he is in the right spot to do so. Obviously, with the Blues starting to head towards a rebuild, they're starting to trade off some of their players. We saw with the O'Reilly. We're seeing with this Krug era where, we're starting to really try and get rid of them. I'll be curious to see, what happens with the St. Louis Blues, whether they're going to make a big move. But nonetheless, I am curious to watch that. That'll be a player to watch, whether or not he can find his way through. He did captain Sweden to a silver medal at the U18s. So we'll see sort of if Stenberg is the move in long term for the Blues. Because obviously they're not really looking right now. That's not their main goal. But long term, we'll see what St. Louis ends up doing. But that being said, we're on to pick 26, San Jose Sharks. San Jose, I don't think will trade their pick. I think they'll keep it. I think they'll definitely look for something. They might be the ones that might, especially if they don't see someone they like, trade that first for 2 second-round picks. Would be a San Jose kind of move, what they're looking to do, try and build as much draft capital, especially now when all the players are a little bit more tighter in terms of value. It makes a lot more sense, especially for San Jose rather, to trade that. In terms of players that you're looking at right now, still Quentin Musty hasn't been picked. Andrew Cristall is another one I'd keep an eye out for. And Lucas Dragicevic, also another one who I would definitely look for. I don't know if Dragicevic will go this early, but he is a player who I do think would fit well in San Jose, given time to sort of build up, as well as Quentin Musty. Quentin Musty, former OHL priority selection draft number 1. So I do expect him to do, as we do hit 10 o'clock on the dot here, Eastern Standard Time. So it has been quite the night in terms of surprises. There's really been 2 surprises tonight. There's only been, well, you can argue the Melinda one was a surprise, but it's really not when you take a look at what's left on the board. When we take a look at this, sort of what happened tonight, one major surprise was Arizona. Arizona has been terrible with their drafts tonight. I'm sure I'll probably bite my words at some point, but Simashev and San Jose just got put on the clock. I thought there might have been a trade there, but Simashev and Daniel Boot, both not very good picks, especially for where they were. It's not necessarily the picks themselves, but when you look at some of the other names that could have fallen, when we look here, Simashev, they should have picked Mishkov, especially as a rebuilding team who doesn't need to win right away. Mishkov was the move. Philly's the clear winner of this draft. And the other one, obviously, as I just sort of touched on, Mishkov was the other surprise. He fell to 7. I originally had him at 4, 4, just because of the teams that were there. Normally, like let's say, for example, any same team back-to-back-to-back, or Chicago back-to-back-back-back, Mishkov would have went 2, just because of the fact that he doesn't need to play. He's the second most skilled player in this draft, no doubt, behind Bedard. He is pretty much up there with Bedard. It's just the one problem is that he doesn't come to North America until year 3 or 4, just depending on that contract in Russia. So it is interesting. Pick 26 here, San Jose Sharks, is now in. So we'll see what they decide to do. I think there's plenty of moves that they can make. But at the end of the day, I do think Quentin Musty is the move for them. I think he'll be the best pick. And I do expect him to do quite well up in San Jose. But with that being said, San Jose, what they've done so far tonight, they made 1 pick, Will Smith at number 4. In my opinion, it wasn't the best pick. I thought they would have went with Mishkov, but Will Smith still is a good player. I had him at 5. Like he was right underneath Mishkov. I just assumed because San Jose isn't really looking to contend anytime soon, Mishkov would have been the right pick. But they might be trying to make a few moves. But we'll see sort of what happens with that. But San Jose is about to make their way up, I believe. So we'll see sort of what ends up happening here. So San Jose is on their way up. We're pick 26 right now. And for whatever reason, still no trades, which is a little bit concerning to the fact that, normally there's a few trades, even if they're small, minor ones. Normally there's a few trades by this point, but yet there still has not been any trades tonight, which is rather unfortunate, but nonetheless, we'll see sort of what else is going to come. If there are trades tonight, I'd expect, once again, I've sort of been touching on this earlier, 2 sort of picks I'm looking at right now. Colorado's the one. Colorado has 2 picks in this first round. Normally, I think one of them will have to be flipped, especially as a contending team. I'd be shocked if Colorado picks. Second, the Toronto Maple Leafs pick. They're a contender. They don't really need the pick. I'd be shocked if they hold on to that one too. But nonetheless, okay, so Quentin Musty is going to the San Jose Sharks. It is about time. Former priority draft number 1 for the OHL. But very, very solid player. And I think when we look at him, just a well-rounded player. He's an offensive threat. He plays both sides of the puck well. And I think, to be honest, San Jose got a real good one there. Unfortunately, they couldn't figure out the Mishkov pick. But if they did, I think that's 2 picks that they really stole in this one. So we'll see sort of what happens there. He's got a good hockey IQ too, Musty does. So we'll see sort of what goes on there. But with that being said, 26 picks down, pretty decent so far. So we'll see sort of what happens. If Colorado, now we got the Colorado picks, we might finally have our first trade of the night. If I had to guess, it's going to be on one of these Colorado picks, if not the Leafs pick. Otherwise, we're probably going to get skunked. I don't think Vegas will trade. I don't think Carolina will trade. St. Louis probably won't trade either. So we're holding out hope here. Hopefully, this happens. Hopefully, there's some sort of trade. That'd be really nice. With that being said, if you are new here, be sure to drop a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and let me know down in the comments who your favorite team is and what moves you'd make to help make your team better. So obviously, coach fans know best, speaking from experience. But with that being said, we're at pick 27 now with the Colorado Avalanche. Slot-wise, 27, Riley Height is the pick. And so far, it's been pretty accurate for the most part. Andrew Cristall is another one I'd watch here. I think Colorado, if they do pick, Cristall will be the pick. I think he's a really solid player all around. When we look at some of the, I think Height is also solid. Dragicevic hasn't been picked yet. I think he'd also be good. Ethan Gauthier is another one who we've sort of seen. He's been pretty solid as well. I think he'd be a good fit. But we'll sort of see, what if the Leafs, and the Leafs are another one. I think the Leafs are a team, if they really want to, they might be a team that would, trade away their pick just to show to their team, like Treleving, who's new to their team. He'd be a kind of guy that might have the ability to, say, okay, we're going to go all in this year. Screw it. We're throwing everything in. We're going to do what Tampa did, where Tampa throws all their picks at these guys. Even if it's an overpayment, they're getting these guys to say to the team, look, we believe in you. We're going to do it. And I think that's what's going to end up happening here. And I think that's especially what we're looking at here with Colorado. If they really do mean business, they really do mean that they're going to win a Stanley Cup. I think 27 and 31 both have to go. But we'll see. Obviously, that's partially because I really want to get a trade review in for you guys right before the end of the video or end of the stream here. We'll do live trade reviews. But if you're new here, be sure to drop a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and drop a comment down below if you are what your favorite team is and what moves you'd make to fix them. With that being said, we have two Colorado picks left: St. Louis pick, Toronto, Colorado or Carolina, and Vegas. So definitely interesting. We'll see sort of what ends up happening here if there's any moves. I think there might be a few things that might come and go. There's definitely an interesting potential here when we look at what these trades could bring. Colorado has 2 first-round picks, and normally when teams have 2 first-round picks, they're either a rebuilding team or they're a team that's about to do some major damage. So we'll see. Like we even saw with Montreal, who they picked up Alex Newhook, because they don't need two first-round picks. Obviously, they already butchered their pick with David Reinbacher, which I'm sure there'll be a problem with sometime in the future. But nonetheless, it's still a good play for the Colorado Avalanche, I think, to trade their pick. We'll see if they do. If they don't, I am a little curious to see who they're going after. I think the reason why, because they are picking this one. So I'll be curious to see why they would have picked 31. If there's a certain player that they've slotted out, saying, okay, he's going to probably get picked a little bit later, first in the second round. So we're going to have to get that one, which is why they went after Montreal and Alex Newhook. So it's really interesting. But nonetheless, we'll see sort of where they go here. Sort of slot-wise, 27, I have Riley Height. I'd also sort of look at Andrew Cristall. I think he's a pretty solid player that we might see. Lucas Dragicevic is another one. Riley Height, Ethan Gauthier, Callum Ritchie is another one who might go here. There's a lot of players that might go here that I think really would benefit the Colorado Avalanche a lot, especially because the main reason why I sort of see them going is for trade purposes. And I think when we look at trade purposes, that's what Colorado's for. They're trying to build a contending team. You need assets that can get you value, and I think that's where these values go. Bradley Nadeau at 31. I don't think so, but that would be an interesting pickup for obviously the Colorado Avalanche. But I would expect them to probably trade away. I I do have to think that Colorado would trade away, but that might be right. You might be onto something there.
Colorado Avalanche are proud to select from Oshawa, Callum Ritchie.
So Callum Ritchie does go to the Colorado Avalanche. So Callum Ritchie, which is really an interesting pick, to be honest with you. It's a good pick. Obviously, we're starting to head towards the end of this draft. So it's starting to get a little bit more precise. I originally had Ritchie going 29 to the St. Louis Blues. So it does make sense here. They get their guy. So 31, as our friend here in the comments says, Bradley Nadeau might be the pick. It might be why they did this move. But we'll see here. Obviously, the Toronto Maple Leafs are up next, which means there might be a trade. Callum Ritchie's a solid player. He's an offensive threat, obviously. But he's also sort of a complete player, and he's going to be able to play both sides of the puck pretty well. So I look forward to seeing what he'll do out in Colorado. I don't know if Colorado is going to keep him or if he'll dish him off at some point. I think we'll definitely be watching it to see if he does get traded off at some point. But Toronto pick, definitely going to be an interesting pick. Obviously, the new GM with Brad Treliving. We'll see what happens there. I would not be surprised to see them trade off, basically trade back 2 second-round picks for a first. That's normally how it goes, especially this late in the draft. What ends up happening. But nonetheless, we'll see sort of what goes on here, whether there's another move. 28 was originally Otto Stenberg. He was picked earlier at 25 with the original Leafs pick. So we'll see sort of what happens here. Andrew Cristall is still a guy who I do expect to move here. If the Leafs do decide to pick, as well as Ethan Gauthier. I think Ethan Gauthier would probably be more of a Leafs pick, just sort of the physicalness that he brings. But overall, I do think that the Leafs are it doesn't make sense to me. This trade never made sense to me to get rid of Rasmus Sandin. Never really made a whole lot of sense, especially going into a playoff series where you need all your players as much as you can, and you really got nothing for this pick. So I do assume that this is going to most likely get moved here, if not at some point in the near future. Obviously, they don't have to do it right away, but they definitely do probably want to do it at some point. But with that being said, we have 28th pick coming up. We have 5 more picks in this draft before the end. So we got about 15-ish minutes left to see if there's going to be any big moves. With that being said, it will definitely be interesting. And I look forward to seeing what's going to go on here. I do hope that the Leafs make a trade. I think the Leafs would be the team to make a trade. If not Colorado, or maybe they go with Bradley Nadeau. It'll be interesting to see. But with that being said, Carolina is another team I'd keep an eye out for to make a trade. They'll be one that might trade down as well, especially if they don't see someone they like. I do think Treliving will probably go up there just to pick, just for the sake of picking. But it'll be interesting to see sort of if there's any trades last second. But we will see. I do have Adam Gajan still going 31. That's also just a World Juniors pick, so I doubt that's actually going to happen. But my World Junior bias really showing through here. But we'll see. So we got 1 minute 50 left before the Leafs are scheduled to pick. We'll see if they lock it in. But we'll see. So obviously, plenty of time left in this draft before they sort of make it to the end. We'll make our way through here. I do expect there to be some action here, especially towards the end. But obviously, plenty of time left. The pick is in. Okay, so the Leafs are going to be picking. Slot pick, Stenberg, obviously not there anymore. So I would not be surprised to see Riley Heidt, Ethan Gauthier. I think Gauthier would actually be a really good pickup. If not, probably Dragicevic or maybe Andrew Cristall will be sort of my top 4. I'm sure they're going to go off the board here. Maybe pick up a defenseman, which really doesn't make sense to me. But you know what? Obviously, Dubas is gone now. So Treliving has a messed up pin, which is really bothering me. His pin is basically sideways. Someone's got to tell him his thing's the wrong way. But nonetheless, so just one of those things, where it's just, I think at the end of the day, the Leafs are going to do what the Leafs are going to do. They're going to, I'll be curious to see who they pick. They got quite the team to do it. But with that being said, pick 28.
How much pressure, Chuck, does that put on a team?
28. We'll see what they do here. Obviously, they did want to pick in this draft. I assume it's basically the thinking behind it. But at the end of the day, you get rid of Rasmus Sandin, who's a really solid player, for really not that much. And like at the end of it's just sort of that trade-off where I don't know if it makes the most sense for the Leafs, but nonetheless they did it. So you got to live with that. You got to live with that decision at the end of the day. So with that being said, the Leafs are about to pick. The pick is in. We'll see who they decide to go with. I think Dragicevic or Ethan Gauthier is my pick. It might be Riley Heidt, though. So we'll see who they go with. They're about to announce it. Trey Leving is coming up to the mic
Just wanted to thank the city of Nashville.
and do their thank yous. So with that being said, if they're doing their thank yous, I'm going to do my thank yous. Thank you for watching. If you liked it, drop a like. If you really liked it, consider subscribing. And let me know your thoughts or your what your favorite team is down below in the chat, as well as what moves you'd make if you were the GM of your team.
Toronto selects from the London Knights, Easton Cowan.
Oh, wow. Okay, so they went off the board again. Easton Cowan is the pick. So that's really off the board. That was not what I was expecting at all. But it once again, it's another one of those moves where, hey, you got to go off the board at some point, right? And we're starting to get to that point now where you're going to start to see their guys get grabbed. So we'll see sort of what ends up happening if this move ends up actually making anything. But Easton Cowan is going to the Toronto Maple Leafs. So we'll see sort of what goes on there. If that move ends up being anything in the future, I do expect the Leafs to trade him off at some point, like just one of those guys. But we'll see. Obviously, Trey Leving wants to make a lasting impression here with the Leafs, especially after leaving Dubas behind. So we'll see sort of what ends up going on if the Leafs make any other moves here over the next sort of week or so. As they begin to sort of look interior and try and sign some more guys. We'll see sort of what goes on there. But with that being said, we have 4 picks left. So, last sort of 10-ish minutes left before the end of this draft. Still 0 trades have been reported, which is surprising because normally there's a few trades here or there. But Easton Cowan is the pick for the Toronto Maple Leafs. So a very interesting move, obviously. With that being said, still plenty of time left for trades. I'm really hoping for trades. I want to do a live trade review for you guys on stream here before the end of it. With that being said, St. Louis here, 29. There might be a trade here. And I think when you look at what's going on here, it'll likely be a trade down. So what we look at is 2 second-round picks, especially if St. Louis doesn't see someone they like. The slot pick right now is Callum Ritchie, who got picked at 27. So it's not necessarily there. But when we look at it, there's still Dragicevic on the board, Andrew Cristall, and Ethan Gauthier as well. Riley Heidt is another one who I'd look at. So there's a few players there that you might want to go after. But if that's not really what you're looking for, you might just trade down. And I think that's where St. Louis is really going. I think when we look at what St. Louis is, they're a team that's looking to sort of rebuild and replenish. So if they can trade down, it gives them 2 draft picks instead of 1, around the same value. Right, where, the higher up the first round pick, the more value it has. Once you get to sort of the 15, 16 mark, their first round picks become a lot less valuable. And they basically become equivalent to that of a second round pick-ish, a little bit. Obviously, there's a little bit better players the farther up you go. But the second round is basically the same. And I think St. Louis might be a team that will sort of say, okay, you know what? We don't need the first right now. We're going to go with a second. I think that's sort of where at least I'm looking right now. For the St. Louis Blues, they're going to say, you know what, we don't need it right now. But towards the end, you know what, that's okay. But I think that's where St. Louis is going here at 29. So we'll see sort of what goes on there if they decide to go way off the board. Obviously, we're sort of coming to that end now where we're going to start to see some off-the-board picks, especially for far-reaching defensemen. Defensemen become really hard to find in these drafts, especially for teams where they don't really have second-round picks. I don't think we'll see that as much with St. Louis, but some of these other teams where, they have 1 pick throughout the entire draft, they might trade down to get 2 picks in the second or, a second, a third, and a fourth. or something of that sort of nature where they can say, okay, we don't want anyone right now, but if we look down to the future, there might be someone we want that we're looking at, and we're going to trade down to get them. So I think that's sort of where you're looking here. So St. Louis is picking, so they're not going to do that. They have someone in mind. I think it might be Dragicevic. I have to be honest. I think Dragicevic might be the player that they're looking at. Just sort of a good fit, in my opinion, for St. Louis. The other one might be Andrew Cristall. I'm starting to bank my hopes up on him. He's starting to fall down the list. Riley Height's another one who might go a little bit high. But we'll see. Obviously, we'll see sort of goes. David Enstrom's another one. And Adam Gajan is one. I'm still banking on him, World Junior Slovakian goalie, who was lights out. But nonetheless, still interesting. And we'll sort of recap the night so far as we reach the 10:20 mark of the night. We look here. There's been two major surprises of tonight. Number one, the Arizona Coyotes. They have picked atrociously tonight. To put it nicely, they've picked atrociously. You have Dmitry Simashev and Daniel Boot. Both were not the right pick at the right time. When we look at the second Arizona pick, Daniel Boot, Zach Benson was one who I was really looking at, and Axel Sandin Pellikka. Sorry, it's been a long night on the throat. But with that being said, and the other one here, this is the one where I was really, really unhappy to see, and that was Dmitry Simashev over Matevy Mishkov. When we look at Mishkov, it's like, obviously the Arizona Coyotes aren't a team that's looking to contend anytime soon because they're terrible. To put it nicely, they're terrible. But there's all these other options, and they went with Simashev, who's not let's be honest here, Simashev should have went here. If he was going to go, he could have went there, but they decided, no, we're going to pick him way early. They picked him at 6. So anyway, enough ranting about the Arizona Coyotes. The St. Louis Blues are about to make their selection. This will be their, I believe, third selection of the night. So they went off the board. Theo Littstein from Sweden. So once again, another off the board pick. So very, very interesting. Obviously, we start to get later in the draft. They go off where they normally go. So it is an interesting pickup. I do think it's a good pickup at the end of the day. But it's just one of those picks where you don't really like. It's not when you're blow your socks off picks, and that's where we started talking earlier that. Where especially when you're looking at defensemen, that's where you have to go. You have to go off the board because there's no other options. And if you don't go with any other options, you become screwed. But we'll see sort of where this goes. He's a pretty much a lockdown D. But we'll see sort of what goes on there. With the 30th pick here, Carolina, let's look ahead. Will they trade their pick? Maybe. Obviously, we're really hoping now. We have 3 picks left. Final 10 minutes of the stream. So if you are new here, please do subscribe. Like it if you liked it. And let me know down below your thoughts. Who your favorite team is, number 1, and what you would do to improve them. If you have like a special move, maybe it's a trade, maybe it's an acquisition, free agency market. Let me know what it is. With that being said, let's take a look at the Carolina Hurricanes here. What their pick might entail. The slot pick is David Edstrom. We'll see if that's what it ends up being. I don't think it will be. But with that being said, I am curious to know. And we'll sort of take a look here. We'll talk about the Vegas-Pittsburgh trade a little bit later tonight, as probably right before that trade. We'll take a look. Obviously, St. Louis just picked. Let's talk about the St. Louis-Philly trade. Kevin Hayes at 50% to the St. Louis Blues in exchange for a 2024 6th-round pick, which is exchanged for which used to be was essentially what it was going to be for the what's his name? Tony DeAngelo trade before that got vetoed up by the commissioner. But basically what this trade entailed was Torrey Krug was originally going to go to the Philadelphia Flyers in exchange. And basically that was the deal. It was Kevin Hayes. And it was just an interesting sort of move, what they were thinking. So basically Kevin Hayes was going to go to St. Louis with Tony DeAngelo in exchange for Torrey Krug. Obviously, Krug didn't want to go, so that was this whole thing. Then it was just going to be D'Angelo going. So long story short, that was what ended up happening. Kevin Hayes at 50% retained in exchange for a 6th-round pick. I think it's a good move. I'm not really sure what St. Louis is doing right now, whether they're trying to look like whether they're trying to be a contender or whether they're trying to be something more. But it is an interesting move nonetheless. We'll see sort of what they're up to.
Don't worry.
And I really do look forward to sort of seeing what else happens in this draft. Carolina here. Let's talk Carolina, what they're up to. So Carolina is one of those teams where we'll sort of see a lot of stuff happening here. I think there's the potential for sort of a trade down. I think when we look at them, they'll probably have someone in mind. I'm looking at David Edstrom. I know he sort of fits the build of Carolina, what they're looking to do. So I do think Edstrom is a very, very solid sort of fit, and I think he'll fit in quite well in Carolina. We'll see. There's also Andrew Cristall, who's sort of has the skill, just hasn't been picked yet. We'll see if they want to go with him. Ethan Gauthier is another one, and Lucas Dragicevic is another one who I'm looking at. Hasn't been picked yet. I think he could be a move, but we'll see. Obviously, 30th pick, Carolina Hurricanes. We'll see sort of what they're up to. If they have any sort of process or any sort of thoughts here. But nonetheless, we are 3 picks away from the end of today, at the end of the NHL Entry Draft 2023. So we'll see if there's any last-second trades, anything crazy that goes on. Normally, it doesn't. Unfortunately, we've had 0 trades tonight, which has been really, really unfortunate. Obviously, we were hoping for some. But nonetheless, we are here nearing the end with the pick of Carolina, who's going to make the 30th pick of the draft. 3 to go. So we'll sort of see if anything exciting happens here towards the end of the draft. But there hasn't been any trades yet. So we'll see if there's anything towards the end of the draft. Obviously, okay, so Carolina's picking, which means that basically once Carolina picks, there's 2 picks left. Colorado, who might trade. They did trade to get the pick, traded away Alex Newhook, which might mean that there's something there, and I think that there might be. So I'm curious to know what that is. We had a friend earlier in the comments who said it was Bradley Nadeau. So I'll be curious to see if it is him or if it's someone else. But we'll see. So the Carolina Hurricanes are announcing their pick. So then after Carolina's pick, there'll be 2 more picks, Colorado, Vegas, and then we'll be done. So with that being said, Carolina is going to announce their pick.
I'd like to congratulate the Vegas Golden Knights on winning the Stanley Cup. Thank you, the city of Nashville, for all your hospitality. And then to my good friend, David Poyle,
So we'll see what they do here. So Carolina is about to announce their pick. Dragicevic is still up there. Ethan Gauthier, Riley Heidt.
Darren York, our assistant general manager.
And then lastly, Andrew Cristall, I think, will be one of the 4, I think, unless they're going off the board.
Select Bradley Nadeau.
Oh, so Bradley Nadeau goes at number 30. So it's not the Colorado pick. So that's interesting. Maybe that might have been a sabotage pick. It's hard to tell.
Most points in the BCHL as an under-18 player since Kyle Turris. He was the playoff MVP. He's actually
So an interesting move here by the Carolina Hurricanes. They went off my board, but that's probably one of the reasons why we sort of saw Colorado trade to that spot, because they originally thought that Nadeau would have been available. Unfortunately, he was not. So it's very interesting to see sort of that. But with that being said, there's two picks left. We'll see sort of in this final 6 minutes or so whether or not either of these trades will come. If Colorado will be making their pick. But sort of just recapping the night so far, what we have, Connor Bedard, number 1, no surprise. Surprises of the night, there's been 2. Number 1, Matevy Mishkov dropping to number 7. Secondly, whatever the heck Arizona's been on tonight has been very interesting to see. They have been, to put it nicely, terrible. They've messed up the Simashev pick. They could have picked Bedard. They could have picked really anyone else on this list. They decided, nope, we want Simashev, which is fine. And they decided to mess up the next one with Daniel Boot. even though they could have picked Zach Benson, Axel Sandin Pellikka, and really any of these other picks, they decided to go Daniel Buto. So with that being said, really odd call. I am curious to know what's going on inside their head, if they got something in mind, but I really don't think that they do. I think they're just having some fun. But with that being said, still an interesting move. You got to love it. Yeah, so we have 2 picks left. We have Colorado and we have Vegas. So that being said, 2 picks. Hopefully we'll get a trade. Been waiting all night for a trade. Unfortunately, there hasn't been one yet. But when we look here, so slot value right here, we got Adam Gajan at 31. Obviously, I don't think it's going to be that. The original reason why I said that was because it was the Montreal Canadiens. However, I don't believe that's going to be the case. The one reason at the time of making the prediction video, but if I had to guess, now we're looking at probably Dragicevic, Gauthier. Gauthier, I think, makes the most sense for them, mainly because when you look at what they do, I think Gauthier just fits that build of, that rough and tough Colorado team. I think he could also fit in terms of physical side. But at the same time, you don't really know. There could be that idea. Andrew Cristall is another one I think could go. Lucas Dragicevic is another one. Riley Height is one who I really do think Colorado could pick up here as we do reach the 10:30 mark of the night. Colorado is now on the clock. I'll be curious to see if they trade down now. Obviously, it was rumored before. Oh, no, they have made their pick. Their pick is in, so there will not be a trade for that pick. Maybe there will be a trade on the last one. I doubt there will be. But nonetheless, Colorado's pick is now in. We'll see who it is. David Edstrom's another one who I might think could be. But nonetheless, I think that, once again, it's a pretty decent draft so far. Not too many surprises, but definitely enough to keep it interesting. It's been a really stacked draft class this year, so it's definitely good to have picks in this draft. So I'm curious to see what else happens in this one, whether or not there's another big name dropped or not. But sort of looking at what it could be, Ethan Gauthier, I think, is probably what I'm looking at, unless they go off the board. Once again, they could go off the board. They do that quite often, especially Colorado, who traded up. And the reason why they would have traded up is because they'd say, okay, hey, let's be smart here. Let's go grab someone we want in exchange for Alex Newhook, which was the trade. So I'll be curious to know sort of what happens. They did get another second-round pick. So I'll be curious to see if, maybe they decide to, go, hey, okay, we got someone we want. Let's go grab them, which is why I think that's why this pick's going to be off the board. They said, okay, we're going to go grab this pick now. It was really rumored as Bradley Nadeau, who just went and picked 30. But I'm curious to see sort of what goes on here, if there's anyone else. But nonetheless, 31, pick 31. It will be interesting. And we have one final pick at the end after this one. Oh, and Colorado is now taking the stage, which means we are basically one pick away from being done. So with that being said, let's see who Colorado is going to pick. Joe Sakic taking the stage. Nonetheless, we'll see who they decide to go with. Colorado is on the clock. They've already picked once tonight. They did pick Callum Ritchie at 27. Let's see who they're going to pick at 31.
With the 31st pick, the Colorado Avalanche are very proud to select from Omsk, Mikhail Gulyayev.
Okay, so Mikhail Gulyayev, not on the board, but he is an off-the-board pick. We'll see sort of, obviously, once again, we're at the point in the draft now where we go off the board to grab the players they want. They traded Newhook to get to this pick. They're going to go off the board and grab the guy they want, and that's why they're here. So it does make a lot of sense.
There's no question that the Colorado Avalanche value mobile defensemen. Look at what they have in their lineup. We're talking about a Samuel Girard, a Bowen Byron.
I'll mess that up.
This is the next line in terms of mobile defensemen.
So with that being said, it's a good pick. And I do think it is going to be a good pick for them. So overall, when we look at this pick, I think it's just an overall solid pick. But with that being said, we are one pick left of the night. So it has been a very fun night. Thank you for everyone for tuning in. We'll talk one last here. We got one last little note, which is the Pittsburgh-Vegas trade, which happened earlier today. Obviously, with Vegas picking now, it feels no better time to do so. With pick 32, so Vegas acquired a 2024 third-round pick in exchange for Riley Smith, which is, once again, another one of their players. Obviously, Vegas winning the Cup. Now they're looking ahead how to build their team even better. I think Riley Smith, unfortunately, just because of his cap hit, had to go. So good pickup for the Penguins, obviously. When you trade for a fourth or third round pick, rather, it's a good trade-off. Obviously, you're getting some value in Riley Smith. You're getting a really solid player as well in exchange for basically a third-round pick. You're not giving up too much, and you're getting a really solid player. And Pittsburgh can take on that cap. So when it comes to what they're going to do, it is a really, really solid move. And we got one pick left here with Vegas, so maybe, just maybe, we'll get a trade. One can only hope. There hasn't been any tonight, unfortunately, which is actually really surprising because normally there'll be a trade here or there. Unfortunately, 0 trades tonight. But oh well, can't win them all. So pick 32 with the Vegas Golden Knights, the Stanley Cup champions. We'll see basically what they're up to. Let's see if they're going to pick, if they're going to trade it off. I really do hope they trade it off. I would very much like to make a trade review live, but nonetheless, I do not believe that they're going to. So we'll see sort of what goes on here. So 2 minutes left on the clock before Vegas makes their pick. But with that being said, if you're new here, be sure to hit the like, subscribe if you haven't already. Let me know down in the comments or in the chat what your favorite team is and what moves would you make to fix them, make them better, make them a Stanley Cup contender now or in the future, whatever you want to do. So Vegas' pick is in, which means we have made it the entire 32 picks without a trade tonight, which is rather unfortunate. But oh well, can't win them all. So fortunate, but nonetheless, pick 32 is in. So we'll see sort of what the move is, if there is anything exciting here. But yeah.
Believe it or not, we've ripped through 31 selections so far. There's only one pick to go. We have yet to have a trade. We've definitely had a few surprises, but it's the Vegas Golden Knights.
Yep, so no trades tonight, unfortunately. We've made it the entire way. So no trades tonight, unfortunately, for us. But with that being said, make sure to subscribe. If you haven't already, like it, ring the bell, comment, do whatever you want to do. Have fun, go berserk. With that being said, 32, last pick of the night. It should be. It's been quite the draft, and we'll go through the draft recap here in about 5 minutes once this pick gets through. But Friedman is just sitting there on his phone, rather sad because he's just been sitting there. He hasn't got to do anything all night, so poor him. But nonetheless, we'll see sort of what this pick is. If I had to guess, thought pick Charlie Stramel already went back at 21, so we'll see who it is. Dragicevic, Gauthier, Height, Andrew Cristall's the other one. That's probably the top 4 in my opinion. But you also look, there's also going to be defensemen if they want to go with the slot or a defense pick, who are just going to be off the board. So we'll see sort of what goes on there. Be curious to see who goes. But nonetheless, here we go. We'll see sort of who it is. So we'll see what Vegas says here. See who it is. Final pick. Oh, and they still haven't picked yet, so they'll be waiting. Kelly McCrimmon, GM, is going to make the pick, I think.
The Vegas Golden Knights would like to congratulate David Poyle on a tremendous career as a general manager.
So we'll see sort of what goes on here. I'm not sure who it's going to be, to be honest. David Edstrom could be it too. There's quite a few options, actually, for this pick. We'll see who it's going to be.
The Vegas Golden Knights are pleased with the 32nd selection in the first round of the entry draft to select from Finland, Sweden, David Edstrom.
David Edstrom is the pick. Okay, so that concludes the NHL first round entry draft. So we'll see if tomorrow provides any more insight. unfortunately, no trades. We won't be live tomorrow, but we'll have a full recap up at some point. Maybe tomorrow night, maybe a little bit down the road. But with that being said, it has been quite the draft. Obviously, not too much excitement with no trades, but there has been a lot of action here. Obviously, when we started the night, Connor Bedard, number 1 overall, which has been sort of speculated. It's been pretty well known that was going to happen. 2 and 3 were up for grabs. Leo Carlson went 2. Fantilli went 3. Will Smith took 4. The first real surprise of the night was David Reinbacher, number 5 to the Montreal Canadiens. They did go a little bit off the board. Not too much off the board, but off the board enough. And then finally, not finally, but the big one, big off the board was Dmitry Simashev from the Arizona Coyotes. He was originally projected to be like 15 to 20. He went down to 6. So, and they missed big, in my opinion, on the number 7 pick, which is probably one of the biggest surprises of the night. It's Heavy Mishkov to these Philadelphia Flyers. Probably the steal of the night. Probably the best pick we've seen. Mishkov at number 7. Number 8, Ryan Leonard. You know, we get to the point now where it's, okay, now let's just get the good picks in. Number 9, Nate Danielson. Number 10, Dalibor Dvorsky. Number 11, Tom Willander, the Vancouver Canucks. And then once again, we had another one where it's Arizona sort of struggled tonight to figure out who they wanted. Daniel Boot, in my opinion, not a great pick, especially with who they could have grabbed. Unfortunately for them, I just couldn't figure it out. So 13, who I think they should have picked at 12, Zach Benson. 14 is Braden Yeager. 15, Matthew Wood. Sam Honzak comes at 16. Axel Sandy-Pellikka, who's the other one I think Arizona should have picked if they were going to pick between the two. Axel Sandy-Pellikka, Detroit Red Wings, great pickup there. Colby Barlow is at 18. That was a really good pickup as well. 19, Oliver Moore, Chicago, great pickup in my opinion. Edward Saleh at pick 20. 21, Charlie Stramel to the Minnesota Wild. Pretty solid pickup there too. Not anything to write home about, but he's still pretty solid overall. And now you get to the rest of the picks. Oliver Bunk, 22, and now we go not off the board yet, but 23, Gabe Perreault, Tanner Molindic at 24. And that's where we start to head off the board a little bit. Otto Stenberg back on board, 25, the St. Louis Blues. Quentin Musty, San Jose Sharks, 26. Callum Ritchie, 27. Ethan Cowan at 28. So Edward Cowan rather at 28. Pretty solid pick for the Leafs. I mean, he's not necessarily brought home. They went off the board. They got their guy. 28, Cowan to the Leafs. 29, you got Linston to the St. Louis Blues. 30, Bradley Nadeau to the Carolina Hurricanes. Originally, that was suspected to be what the Colorado Avalanche had traded Newhook for, to get Bradley Nadeau. Carolina stole him, which meant that the Colorado Avalanche had to pick Alexander Goliev. Holy, I can't speak tonight. And then lastly, we ended the draft. Vegas Golden Knights picking up David Edstrom to conclude the draft. And unfortunately, no trades tonight, which was unfortunate because we'll pull it up here. Might as well show you what we had planned. We did have the trade review all ready and all set up, but unfortunately, no trades tonight to do it. So with that being said, if you made it this far in the video, thank you for watching. If you'd like to drop a like, if you'd like to consider subscribing, tell all your friends, leave a comment down below your thoughts on the round 1 of the NHL Entry Draft. Until next time, see ya. Take care, everyone.